Hi everyone. If you enjoy my content and want more videos, support me in Ko-fi. The link in the description. Chapter 751. About the memories of the sequence cultivation path and the memories of the cosmic cultivation path. These were the memories most digested by Milton Cheney in these hundreds of millions of years. The reason he had previously made a wrong judgment was actually because this scene was too similar to reaching the other shore. The original owner had already cultivated the sequence cultivation path to the 15th realm, so why suddenly choose to switch to the cosmic cultivation path? Switching to the cosmic cultivation path at this time, the wasted time seems a bit too much. Milton Cheney muttered to himself, somewhat unable to understand. At this time, he couldn't control this body, so he could only think about it to himself. He could not stop the original owner's actions, nor could he guess the original owner's thoughts. So Milton Cheney could only watch everything as a silent observer. Actually, whether it's the 15th realm sequence cultivation path or the 15th stage cosmic cultivation path, both were very distant to Milton Cheney at this moment. If he could continuously extrapolate the wizard immortal cultivation path in reality, then, in the end, maybe the wizard immortal cultivation path could also become a new sequence. That's right, a sequence, not a cosmic cultivation path. In fact, Milton Cheney had also encountered the cosmic cultivation path before. The cosmic cultivation path, simply put, is the cultivation path autonomously generated by the universe consciousness. The sequence cultivation path, on the other hand, is the path of cultivation opened up by an individual. Of course, not all individual created paths of cultivation qualify to be called sequence cultivation paths. For a cultivation path to be called a sequence cultivation path, the primary condition is that it has produced true beyond the horizon beings. In other words, if Milton Cheney can keep extrapolating the wizard immortal cultivation path into the future, then at some future moment, if he reaches beyond the horizon through the wizard immortal cultivation path, it will naturally turn into the wizard immortal sequence. At that time, the household he established would be the new sequence household in the universe. Of course, the difficulty of this is tremendous. In the universe, actually, most beings that reach beyond the horizon do so through the cosmic cultivation path. Those who reach beyond the horizon through the sequence cultivation path are quite rare. Of course, this is only the case in the current era. If it were in the era from Milton Cheney's last fate simulation, then most of those who reached beyond the horizon did so by following the existing sequences. As time slowly passed, Milton Cheney could also clearly perceive any change in his body. At this moment, the power of the sequence cultivation path contained within his body was gradually disappearing, replaced by the very weak energy of the cosmic cultivation path. The two were not even on the same level. This was also the reason Milton Cheney couldn't understand why the body's original owner wanted to switch paths. After all, if one kept cultivating the sequence cultivation path, then this body was not particularly far from reaching beyond the horizon at this time. But if one switched to cultivating the cosmic cultivation path, wanting to cultivate to a realm that could reach beyond the horizon would undoubtedly require spending a very long time all over again. During such a long time, Milton Cheney was not sure if he could wait that long in this fate simulation. Time indeed did not have a major impact on him at this moment. But that was for a short duration. If the timeline was stretched to a certain extent, then even Milton Cheney would be significantly affected. As time flew by, and in almost an instant, 100 million years had passed. Inside the 27 great halls, Milton Cheney's eyes were tightly closed, his expression serene. A faint mist lingered around him. By now, the power of the sequence cultivation path within his body had completely disappeared. It seemed as if the original owner had long made preparations. Switching to the cosmic cultivation path did not take as long as Milton Cheney anticipated. Now, just 100 million years had passed, and Milton Cheney's body had already cultivated to the 15th stage of the cosmic cultivation path. This speed was completely beyond Milton Cheney's expectations. He had thought that after the original owner switched to the cosmic cultivation path, it would take at least several billion years to recultivate to this realm. A moment later, Milton Cheney reopened his eyes. Control of the body has been restored, he muttered to himself. At this moment, he regained control of his body, and the consciousness of the original owner within the body disappeared again. Milton Cheney shifted back from the third-person perspective to the first-person perspective. The energy of a 15th stage universe cultivator contained within his body, Milton Cheney could clearly perceive it now. The distance to reach beyond the horizon is still very far, just unsure what the conditions for ending this fate simulation are. Is it the same requirement to reach beyond the horizon? Milton Cheney pondered within his heart. Why the original owner chose to switch to the cosmic cultivation path, even Milton Cheney, who had digested the original owner's memories, did not understand. At this moment, the question he pondered was simple. What were the conditions for ending this fate simulation? A fate simulation, naturally, would not simulate until the end of one's lifespan. In the last fate simulation, the reason it ended was that he chose to reach beyond the horizon within the simulation. Are the conditions for ending this simulation the same? Does this body need to reach beyond the horizon? Milton Cheney did not know. After all, up to now, he has only experienced 2 fate simulations, and even this current simulation has not yet ended. Regarding fate simulation, Milton Cheney only has a simple understanding. Chapter 752. As for a deeper understanding, naturally, it is non-existent. However, if the condition to end this fate simulation is also to ascend beyond the horizon, then the time Milton Cheney would spend in this fate simulation might be quite lengthy. At the very least, it would be a matter of several epochs. After all, his current body was merely that of a 15th stage universe cultivator, and one of the prerequisites to ascend beyond the horizon was that he must possess the boundary of a 16th stage limit realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have the qualification to attempt it. The clear memories in his mind made Milton familiar with how a universe cultivator should practice cultivation. Therefore, Milton concealed the miscellaneous thoughts in his heart and completely emptied his consciousness, falling into a deep state of cultivation. Such cultivation had one benefit for Milton, which was that it allowed him to forget the passage of time. In this state, his body would instinctively remain in a state of cultivation, while his consciousness was as if it had fallen into a sort of sleep in an alternative state. In this way, he would not be affected by the passing of time, nor would he get lost in this fate simulation. Milton was unclear what were the conditions for this fate simulation to end. But whatever it was, he would not simply choose to actively end this fate simulation. After all, for Milton, the opportunity for fate simulation was no less than a treasure trove. Just the memories available for him to digest in the fate simulation were already of unimaginable help to Milton. Time never stops flowing, but it can remain unfelt. At least, the Milton whose consciousness had fully fallen into a void state could not perceive the passage of time. Therefore, he was also unaware of how much time had actually passed. At a certain moment, his consciousness awoke from the void state. This was not because Milton had actively awoken his consciousness. It was because he clearly sensed that at this moment, he had lost control over his body. This meant that the original owner's consciousness had reappeared. And the original owner's consciousness would not appear without reason. Is some great event about to happen? Upon regaining consciousness and shifting to a third-person perspective, Milton felt a stir in his heart. By now, he had discovered a pattern. That was, every time the original owner's consciousness appeared, it was accompanied by the occurrence of great events. The next moment, changes started manifesting in his body. Milton could clearly sense that the boundary of this body was beginning to ascend. Under Milton's third-person view, an eerie change occurred around him, and a pitch-black void portal appeared in front of him. How is this possible? The boundary has not met the requirements, so why has the beyond the horizon space opened prematurely? The instant he saw the void portal, a shock of emotion inevitably rose in Milton's heart. Before Milton could contemplate further, his body stepped into the void portal. Being in possession of all the memories of this body, it was natural for Milton to know what this void portal represented. Even without the memories of this body, he was clear. After all, in the previous fate simulation, he had entered this beyond the horizon space. Crossing from one world to another seems very easy when spoken about. After all, any cultivator of the 7th or 8th stage could do it effortlessly, but what about an ordinary person? For an ordinary person to cross from one world to another is almost impossible. Without the aid of any tools, there's not even the slightest chance of success. To ascend beyond the horizon is akin to an ordinary person physically traversing between worlds. And the beyond the horizon space is the support for that traversal. It can be said that any cultivator who wishes to ascend beyond the horizon will first be guided into the beyond the horizon space. Is it because this body transitioned from following the sequential path of cultivation to the universe path of cultivation? Milton murmured to himself. He was somewhat puzzled. Because at this moment, he could very clearly sense that the boundary of his body was definitely not at the 16th stage of the universe cultivator's realm. Yet despite this, he was still being guided by the beyond the horizon space. This indicated that his body at the 15th stage boundary was already meeting the conditions to ascend beyond the horizon. This was almost impossible. At least within the memories that Milton Cheney was aware of, it was impossible. In the void world, Milton Cheney's figure appeared here. The next moment, Milton Cheney suddenly paused. Indeed, after his body appeared in the beyond the horizon space, he regained control over it once again. That also meant that to step onto the transcendence path and ascend to the beyond, he had to steer this journey himself. The first-person perspective and third-person perspective provided completely different experiences to Milton Cheney. Just as I thought, the condition to ending the fate simulation is still for me to complete the step of ascending to the beyond, isn't it? Milton Cheney muttered to himself. Being stunned was only a momentary feeling, Milton Cheney quickly regained his composure. After all, he had made preparations beforehand, it was just somewhat sudden, comparatively speaking. Whether he could successfully ascend to the beyond wasn't something that Milton Cheney was particularly concerned about. After all, no matter how one looked at it, he was just in a simulation at this time. Even if he could successfully ascend to the beyond in this fate simulation, his real self wouldn't gain any significant benefit from it. Although the fate simulation was precious, Milton Cheney, who had experienced a fate simulation before, knew very well that it would only bring him some memories. The unexpected turn of events in this fate simulation had surprised Milton Cheney a bit. But even so, he only treated this fate simulation as an attempt and experiment. Fortunately, such an experience would only occur within the fate simulation. Naturally, Milton Cheney would also take it seriously. After all, perhaps in some future moment, in reality, he might also have the moment to ascend to the beyond. At that time, the experiences of this moment might become valuable. Such an opportunity wasn't something just anyone could have. Other people weren't very likely to have this kind of opportunity. After all, not everyone could possess an external plugin as powerful as the simulator. The next moment, Milton Cheney's thoughts moved, and he began to control his physical body to try and break this void world according to the memories in his mind. Boom! The immense sound filled this void world. The void world was naturally the beyond the horizon space. Indeed, the effect was poor. However, with the experience from the last fate simulation, Milton Cheney decisively changed his approach. He began to accumulate the universe energy within his body. However, compared to the body he controlled in the last fate simulation, the universe energy contained within the body he was controlling now was significantly less. After all, the realms were different. During the last fate simulation, the universe energy contained within the body he controlled was that of the 16th stage at the limit, whereas this time, the universe energy contained within the body he controlled was merely that of the 15th stage. The gap between them was quite significant. In the time that followed, Milton Cheney began to search for the weak places within the beyond the horizon space. After all, to ascend to the beyond, he had to first break through this void world. To open a gap in the beyond the horizon space, one had to find a region where it could be done. Opening a gap in a borderless void world required considering many aspects. Luckily, this wasn't Milton Cheney's first time experiencing this scene. He had succeeded last time without any experience, there was no reason for him to fail this time. If he failed, it wouldn't be due to his own will. Instead, it would be because of this body. But where should he open this gap? Within the beyond the horizon space, there had to be weak points, which Milton Cheney was very clear about. After all, he had found them last time. But the reason he could find them last time was mostly due to luck. He couldn't always be lucky every time. So this time, he had to consider carefully. Chapter 753. Time flowed slowly. Unlike his previous aimless wandering, Milton Cheney now observed the environment within the beyond the horizon space in detail. His body still had plenty of time left. Since the ascent to beyond the horizon had begun and Milton Cheney controlled this body, naturally he intended to use his uttermost ability to complete what he could. The beyond the horizon space was unlike any other world or any reincarnation he had ever seen. Although it resembled a void-like world, apart from him, it lacked any trace of other forms of life. The reason was simple, this world had come into being solely because of him. The beyond the horizon space, as a trial ground prepared by this universe for those who choose to ascend beyond the horizon, would not bear traces of any other existence unless they chose to ascend. If no one ascended to beyond the horizon in this world, then this world would never exist. It was precisely because he appeared in this world that it was able to be born within the universe. Within the universe, no existence could peek into this place, not even the beyond the horizon power. As Milton Cheney wandered within the world beyond the horizon, the cosmic energy inside his body also slowly accumulated. There doesn't seem to be any difference within this piece of beyond the horizon space, he mused. Every region looks exactly the same from the surface. Perhaps last time I was able to shatter this space really was just good luck. At this moment, Milton Cheney murmured to himself. He did believe in the concept of luck. After all, whether in reality or in simulations, his luck had always been quite good. But he didn't believe that in such a scenario, luck would be a factor influencing an ascendant of beyond the horizon. You see, this was an ascent to beyond the horizon, and the beyond the horizon beings are among the most powerful in the universe. This wasn't just a breakthrough in realm, it was a leap in status. Under such a premise, the possibility that luck could affect the ascent to beyond the horizon seemed unlikely to be very high. He hadn't thought it through last time. But now that he had calmed down and thought about it, it seemed improbable. After all, the fate simulation he was undergoing was different from any reincarnation simulation he had previously used. He was possibly experiencing a pivotal event of destiny that had already occurred. Perhaps some of the decisions he made were subtly influenced by the original owner of the body, something he couldn't perceive due to his low realm. Milton Cheney thought silently to himself. The cosmic energy belonging to a cultivator from the universe still silently accumulated within his body, seemingly near a critical point. However, even at such a critical moment, Milton Cheney didn't rush. A thought suddenly occurred to him. What would happen if he chose not to shatter this void like beyond the horizon space? If he gave up ascending beyond the horizon, what would happen then? Once this thought emerged, his curiosity was piqued. The fate simulation seemed not to dictate that he must complete the step of ascending beyond the horizon within the simulation. At this moment, he had full control over this body. It seemed that no one could stop him, not even the original owner. No, why am I having such thoughts? He suddenly exclaimed. A moment later, Milton Cheney was taken aback. He felt a sense of unease, as if he had just been spellbound and was about to give up ascending beyond the horizon. But according to his personality, he would never have such thoughts. After all, choosing to ascend beyond the horizon would be greatly beneficial to him, giving up would serve no purpose other than satisfying some curiosity. Has my thinking been influenced? Is it the influence of the original owner's consciousness or the influence of this beyond the horizon space? There didn't seem to be such a situation in my last fate simulation. Milton Cheney conversed with himself. He was sure that something was not right with him just now. Normally, he would not have such thoughts. If verification was needed, he would have had such thoughts during his last fate simulation. But that would be of no help to him. In fact, Milton Cheney had even entertained the thought of directly ending this fate simulation. That must be abnormal, since it wasn't his true intention. It was highly likely that something had influenced him. Was it due to this void world? Milton Cheney pondered. But if it were because of the void world, why hadn't the same environment influenced his thoughts during the last fate simulation? Could it be the influence of the original owner's latent consciousness? But that didn't seem very likely either. If the original owner could influence him, it wouldn't have waited until now. In Milton Cheney's opinion, due to the fate simulation, it was highly unlikely that the original owner could even detect his presence. Because it seemed that they simply weren't in the same dimension. If detection wasn't possible, let alone influence. So what was the reason? Could it be because the realm of this body is too low? After contemplating for a moment, Milton Cheney came up with a possibility. You see, at this moment, his body's realm was only at the 15th stage of a universe cultivator. Though this realm was among the peak throughout the entire universe, it was certainly not comparable to other ascendants beyond the horizon. Chapter 754. After all, it is normally only cultivators of the universe with a limit of the 16th stage who have the qualifications to ascend to the beyond the horizon space. Although Milton Cheney was also unclear why this body was able to step into the beyond the horizon space at the 15th stage, he was aware that not meeting the realm requirements would have a huge impact on ascending to the horizon. Otherwise, why wouldn't other cultivators choose to enter the beyond the horizon space at the 15th stage? There certainly are no shortcuts to ascending to the horizon. It's just that at this point, Milton Cheney was not clear about the specific reasons. After pondering for a moment, Milton Cheney was unable to come up with a specific reason, as there were just too many possibilities. So in the end, Milton Cheney still put away the distracting thoughts in his mind. After ceasing to think too much, Milton Cheney discovered that the cosmic energy accumulated within his body had also reached a bottleneck. After reaching a critical point, the energy needed to be released. The next moment, Milton Cheney gathered all the cosmic energy at one point and hurled it at the barrier of this void world. The void world was still the same void world, with not the slightest change occurring. The cosmic energy he released seemed to have disappeared into thin air. But Milton Cheney knew it wouldn't be that simple. Feeling the environment carefully, finally, after a moment, a change occurred. Milton Cheney clearly sensed a pulling force appearing out of nowhere within his body. This sensation seems to be exactly the same as last time. The next moment, his consciousness completely fell into darkness. Luckily, this time he was prepared. At some moment, the world seemed to come to a standstill. But time does not stop. In the universe, no one knows how many eons had passed, perhaps an instant, or perhaps countless eras. At a certain moment, Milton Cheney's consciousness once again became clear. At this moment, the environment around Milton Cheney once again became clear and familiar. Reality, in the initial region of the transcendence path. Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes, his brows slightly furrowed, his eyes flashing with contemplation. He was very clear about what had happened. Just like the last fate simulation, as he gathered all the accumulated cosmic energy and struck out, he was returned to reality. The next moment, the familiar light blue light curtain of the simulator appeared in front of him. And in his mind, the mechanical prompt from the simulator also sounded. Fate simulation has ended, the 17th fate line has been collected. Rewarding the host with part of the inherited memory from the fate simulation. The mechanical voice of the simulator disappeared in an instant. Before Milton Cheney could continue to ponder on something, a vast expanse of memory suddenly appeared in his mind. This flood of memories instantly made it clear to Milton Cheney what he had experienced in this fate simulation. Although only a portion of memories were retained after this fate simulation ended, even this portion of memories lasted longer than any inherited memory from any text simulation that Milton Cheney had preserved before. After all, the inherited memories retained from fate simulation are fragments from the lifetimes of memories of great cultivators of the universe. For Milton Cheney, this segment of memory was of tremendous help. Whether it was deducing realms or reincarnating into new worlds, the help was significant. Digesting this vast memory required an extremely long time. Luckily, Milton Cheney was not lacking in time at this point. After breaking through to the 8th stage wizard immortal in reality, Milton Cheney's lifespan had greatly increased. Whether in simulation or in reality, Milton Cheney was no longer short of time. Of course, vast memory is relative. After all, the current Milton Cheney is different from the last time he initiated a fate simulation. Last time, after the end of the fate simulation, he was only at the 7th stage wizard immortal realm, but now he was already at the 8th stage wizard immortal realm. The difference in realms also means a difference in the strength of consciousness. Moreover, the retained memory is only a fragment, not all the inherited memory from the fate simulation. Time slowly passed, and in the blink of an eye, half a year had gone by. 6 months is not a particularly long time for Milton Cheney. But during this half year, Milton Cheney was always in a state of digesting memories. Of course, this time was much better compared to the last. Last time, he digested a relatively lesser amount of memory but spent a year doing so, the difference was more than just twofold. After digesting the memories, Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes. A sharp gleam flashed through his eyes. As expected, the gains were immense. These memories not only deepened his understanding of the path to transcendence but also his insights into different cultivation paths. This was his biggest gain. After all, the fate simulation he activated this time was attached to an existence who initially followed the sequence cultivation path. Cultivators who pursue the sequence cultivation path share one characteristic: they have encountered countless other cultivation paths. Milton Cheney was pleasantly surprised to inherit these memories. This meant he had many points of reference for further extrapolation on his wizard immortal cultivation path. At that moment, he even regretted not starting the fate simulation earlier. Perhaps the more than 20 times he simulated his real body could have advanced his wizard immortal cultivation path to the 9th stage. Of course, one should be grateful for their fortune and accept their fate. Who could tell if starting the fate simulation earlier would have led to the same experiences as this simulation? Therefore, the emotions that arose in his heart were fleeting. Neither fate simulation gave a definite answer in the end. Is it because the simulator doesn't want me to know the answer? After digesting the memories, Milton Cheney mused to himself. He was unclear whether the original hosts in either the previous or current fate simulation had successfully crossed the beyond the horizon space in the end. He was very curious, yet his curiosity could not be satisfied. If he were to guess, he would wager that the first might have succeeded, but the second likely failed. At the end of the fate simulation, despite his preparation, his consciousness plunged into darkness in an instant. And the next moment his consciousness was restored, he was already back in reality. Even with his preparations, he had no clarity about what happened in the end within the fate simulation. This signified that it was beyond his ability to glimpse. Yet there were too many similarities between the two fate simulations, and the likelihood of coincidence seemed slim. Even though the two simulations appeared to involve different experiences, from a godlike perspective they were actually quite similar, and even his behavior within the fate simulations was strikingly alike. It was as if two identical people were living in parallel universes. Although Milton Cheney was unclear if his simulated self had managed to shatter the void world, accomplishing the first step in ascending to the other shore. Since this fate simulation had concluded, dwelling on these thoughts seemed pointless. With this in mind, Milton Cheney shook his head and chose not to think any more about it. This was only his second experience with fate simulation. He still had 3 fate simulations remaining. While 3 fate simulations might not seem numerous, they were enough to allow him to verify some things. His current understanding of the fate simulations might be unclear. But that doesn't mean he will remain just as clueless after experiencing them more. Just like how he had only a rudimentary understanding of reincarnation simulations in the past, yet now he was adept at them. With these thoughts, a notion flickered through Milton Cheney's mind. The next moment, the light blue light curtain representing the simulator once again floated in front of Milton Cheney's eyes. Milton Cheney's gaze shifted slightly, resting on the category indicating the count of fate simulations. Fate simulation count, 3. Would you like to initiate a fate simulation? Initiate. Without any hesitation, Milton Cheney once again chose to start a new fate simulation. Chapter 755. If the simulator's upgrade was indeed as Milton Cheney anticipated, then after he used up the last 3 chances of fate simulation, the simulator should fall into the upgrade phase. The next moment, before Milton Cheney could ponder further, the fate simulation had already begun. Milton Cheney's vision changed, and at that moment his consciousness completely plunged into darkness. His senses seemed to be blocked at this moment. He was clearly aware that the fate simulation had begun, but he was unable to perceive anything happening in the outside world. Fortunately, this was not the first time Cheney had experienced such a sensation. So at this moment, his mindset was quite calm. Although he had only experienced fate simulation twice, these 2 experiences were enough for Cheney to have a certain understanding of fate simulation. Fate simulation begins weaving, 78,620 fate lines detected in the host. Successfully attached to the 39th fate line, fate simulation initiated, wishing the host a pleasant experience. The next moment, Milton Cheney, whose consciousness was submerged in darkness, suddenly perceived 2 voices rising within his soul. After the voices fell, his consciousness also quieted down. He did not know how much time had passed, perhaps a year, or perhaps countless years. At this time, Cheney's consciousness was in a state of muddled confusion. He could sense the outside world, but this perception was not clear. It was as if he were in gestation. This was the first time such a sensation had appeared after the start of the fate simulation. It had not occurred during the previous 2 simulations. In this state, Cheney could even perceive the normal passage of time. Time slowly drifted by, and Cheney's consciousness was gradually being nurtured. Although Cheney was puzzled, he did not have many thoughts about it. This fate simulation seemed to be somewhat different, but what exactly was different, he could only know after he had personally experienced it. Years passed. Cheney's consciousness gradually shifted from a state of confusion to one of clarity. This change was exceedingly slow. Fortunately, having undergone countless simulations, Cheney was almost immune to the passage of time. As long as it wasn't an extraordinarily long time, he would hardly be affected by the passage of time, neither in mentality nor consciousness. Suddenly, as if without warning, a massive flood of memories appeared in his mind. Although there were no signs, Cheney was well prepared. Having experienced fate simulation twice, he was well aware that it probably involved inhabiting the body of another being. So, he was already prepared for the inherited memory. Indeed, just as he anticipated, although this start of fate simulation was a bit different from the earlier times, the overall direction seemed to remain unchanged. At a certain moment, he still inherited the original owner's memories within the simulation. Indeed, Cheney now perceived that his body was no longer his own, but a strange one instead. Without thinking, he knew that this body was the one he had inherited in the simulation. Because he was prepared, even when the memories suddenly appeared in his mind, Cheney did not panic. Digesting the inherited memories from fate simulation was not a new experience for Cheney. He was quite seasoned at it. Moreover, this time, Cheney was assimilating the memories faster than the last. After all, he did not immediately digest these memories. Instead, he stored them in his mind first. The reason was straightforward: the volume of memories was too vast. Although Cheney had not sensed these memories in detail, a rough understanding was enough for him to make a judgment. The memories inherited by Cheney's new body were not only more voluminous than the last simulation, but they were even comparable to those from the very first time. Of course, while these memories were vast, Cheney had ample experience. So, as time slowly passed, these strange memories in Cheney's mind became increasingly clear. However, fully digesting these memories was still exceedingly difficult for Cheney. While digesting memory wasn't difficult, the challenge was that these memories were just too plentiful. This meant that to fully assimilate them, he would inevitably need to consume a substantial amount of time. After storing the memories in his mind, Cheney briefly organized them. He then closed his eyes and began digesting the more critical memories in his mind. At the very least, he needed to understand the identity of the body he was inhabiting. He also needed to know whether he was still on the transcendence path. After all, in the previous two fate simulations, the bodies Cheney had inhabited had both been cultivators on the transcendence path. Time continued its slow march, and Cheney silently digested some of the more important memories. Fortunately, he felt no discomfort while digesting these memories. Just like in the previous fate simulations, this time Cheney could still clearly sense that he had taken over another person's body and had obtained control over it. At least at this moment, he had control over this body. Chapter 756. As for what would happen afterward, Milton Cheney had no clear idea. After all, this was but his third time undergoing a fate simulation, having only experienced it twice before. He knew little about whether there were any patterns to the fate simulations and, if so, what those patterns might be. As time elapsed, Milton Cheney gradually digested some of the important memories he inherited. A moment later, Milton Cheney opened his eyes and carefully surveyed his surroundings. A flicker of realization passed through his eyes. Indeed, there are commonalities among the three fate simulations. The body I inherited this time is still that of a cultivator on the transcendence path. Could it be that all the identities I've inherited in the fate simulations are cultivators from the transcendence path? Milton Cheney muttered to himself. Having digested a portion of the memories, he had a clear understanding of the identity of the body he inhabited at the moment. This body's original owner was stronger than those he had inherited in the previous two fate simulations, but the status was much lower. He was but an insignificant loose cultivator on the transcendence path. Within the transcendence path, the number of loose cultivators was extremely high. In reality, Milton Cheney on the transcendence path was actually a loose cultivator as well. The meaning of loose cultivator is simple to grasp: they are wild transcendents, unaffiliated with any force or faction. In fact, the majority within the transcendence path are loose cultivators. The number of noble cultivators is far less than that of loose cultivators. After all, the number of ordinary cultivators in the universe is overwhelmingly large, among whom there will always be some fortunate ones. Could it be that this fate simulation is guiding me once more on the path beyond the horizon? But this body's cultivation is of the devouring path, which seems incapable of transcendence, and it doesn't appear to have the possibility to switch to the universe cultivation path. Milton Cheney pondered. Indeed, the body he had inherited was very strong, but it was cultivating a rather uncommon devouring cultivation path within the universe. It's notable that even the founder who pioneered this path of cultivation did not ascend beyond the horizon. The devouring path allows for rapid advancement, but the limitations are substantial. This body is a genuine 16th tier devouring cultivator, which could be said to have reached the end of this path of cultivation. Furthermore, before he inherited this body, its original owner had already wandered the transcendence path for 720 eons. This means that the body's lifespan had reached its limit. Even a 16th tier cultivator has limitations on lifespan. Only by ascending beyond the horizon can one achieve eternal life and exist as long as the universe itself. It's known that the universe will never collapse. However, Milton Cheney, fully aware of these details, was not overly anxious but instead started digesting the memories of the body he had inherited. Because he had only digested a part of the memories just now, there were still many memories he had not yet assimilated. Although this body's lifespan wasn't much longer, that was a relative term. For other 16th tier cultivators, the lifespan of this body indeed wasn't much, but for Milton Cheney, it was still immensely long. As time slowly passed, Milton Cheney's digested memories grew more numerous. This body is actually the ancestral founder of the devouring path, the opener of the devouring cultivation path. As more memories were digested, Milton Cheney's emotions grew increasingly turbulent. Previously, due to incomplete memory digestion, he had misjudged the body's identity. There are only 16 great families. Could this be the early era of the universe's birth? Only 3 planes in the entire universe. I can freely enter and exit the transcendence path. Am I designated as one fated to go beyond the horizon? Milton Cheney's thoughts multiplied, and his expression grew increasingly serious. No, if it were truly as remembered, and he was designated to go beyond the horizon, why hadn't he ascended in the annals of history? Milton Cheney knew about the devouring cultivation path quite simply. It was because of the memories from the last fate simulation. In the previous fate simulation, the body he inherited initially cultivated the sequence path, leading him to come across many different cultivation paths. The devouring path was one among them. Having inherited relevant memories, Milton Cheney naturally understood this area. However, in his memory, the ancestor who established the devouring cultivation path had never reached beyond the horizon, and the devouring cultivation path was not ranked among the sequence cultivation paths either. If that were the case, then the memories he inherited during this fate simulation conflicted with the memories inherited in the last. Could the information transmitted by the universe consciousness be false? Or is some unforeseen event going to happen? Milton Cheney's expression gradually became calm, but his heart was anything but. By that time, nearly 100 million years had passed since he absorbed the memories. And he had digested not an insignificant amount of them. This body was designated by the universe consciousness as a beyond-the-horizon traveler, and the devouring cultivation path was one of the 17 designated sequence paths. But the Milton Cheney who knew the future was very clear, none of this had happened. In the future, the 17th sequence was the origin light sequence, not the devouring sequence. The next moment, before Milton Cheney could ponder deeply, the space around him suddenly went through a strange change. A dark void portal appeared in front of him. How can it be so fast? Milton Cheney was shocked in his heart. He was not unfamiliar with this dark portal. It signified the opening of the path of beyond the horizon, and on the other side of the portal was the void world beyond the horizon space. Although Milton Cheney was prepared, he hadn't expected it to come so quickly. Compared to the previous 2 fate simulations, this was the fastest that the beyond the horizon space had ever opened. What was crucial was that he hadn't lost control of his body. It seemed that since he inherited this body, up until now when the beyond the horizon space opened, he never lost control of it. This had not been the case in the previous 2 fate simulations. After hesitating for a moment, Milton Cheney still chose to step into the portal that led to the beyond the horizon space. Within the beyond the horizon space, the figure of Milton Cheney appeared. The next moment, Milton Cheney suddenly staggered. For he found that the beyond the horizon space was different than what he had understood it to be. This place could no longer be considered a void world, the whole space within was brimming with white light. A spacious, broad road stretched across the space. Have I been predetermined? Milton Cheney felt a bit astonished in his heart. For at this moment, he could clearly sense a distinct gravitational pull from this space toward him. The road within the space seemed to be calling out to him. The next instant, with the thought from Milton Cheney, his body suddenly appeared on the great road. A piece of unfamiliar memory emerged in his mind. Is this the path of transcendence? I'm already on the path of transcendence? To ascend beyond the horizon totals 3 trials, and I'm starting directly from the 3rd. After digesting this patch of unfamiliar memory, Milton Cheney mumbled to himself. But the next moment, he suppressed the flurry of thoughts in his heart. If the situation confronting this plane in history was the same, then there seemed to be no reason to fail, right? After all, if the universe consciousness was paving the way, what could be greater than the universe consciousness? With some doubts and confusions in his heart, Milton Cheney started to walk on the transcendence path. Time slowly passed, and Milton Cheney didn't know how far he had walked on the path of transcendence. After all, this road was simply too long, with no end in sight. Even so, Milton Cheney's state of mind wasn't affected. At a certain moment, Milton Cheney was taken aback. For he discovered that he abruptly lost control of his body. This was the first time in this fate simulation. His perspective suddenly shifted from first person to third person, and not even Milton Cheney was prepared for it. Chapter 757. Under the third-person perspective, Milton Cheney had a different perception of the body he possessed. In his senses, the energy within him began to uncontrollably dissipate. Is this, actively giving up the chance to become a beyond the horizon? Why would the original host do this? On the transcendence path, a shock ran through Milton Cheney's heart. At this moment, the original host of the body he possessed had actively given up continuing on the path of transcendence, even dispersing all his cultivation. This sudden turn of events caught Milton Cheney off guard. One must know that throughout the entire universe, beings capable of becoming beyond the horizon are extremely rare. Yet, the original host of the body he possessed had voluntarily given up the chance to transcend just before becoming a beyond the horizon. This definitely had a reason. But as for what that reason was, Milton Cheney was not clear. After all, his understanding of beyond the horizon was not abundant. In his mind, a beyond the horizon meant true immortality, and also represented the most powerful existence in the universe. In reality, Milton Cheney himself also aimed to become a beyond the horizon, at least for now. Therefore, this unexpected change in the fate simulation left him somewhat perplexed and astonished. Unfortunately, the questions in his heart were destined to remain unanswered. At this moment, although Milton Cheney had lost control over his body, he could still sense what was actually happening to it. The body was gradually withering. That was Milton Cheney's perception. So it turned out that no accident had occurred in history, but instead, this devourer ancestor voluntarily gave up the chance to become a beyond the horizon. Under the third-person perspective, while sensing the body, Milton Cheney also felt slightly emotional. The other question he had been puzzled about now seemed to have an answer. It was no surprise, after all, that this being had been designated by the universe's consciousness as a beyond the horizon yet still did not become one. Milton Cheney should have guessed what the answer was. It was just that because the possibility was so slim, the previous Milton Cheney never even considered it. Time slowly passed by. The beyond the horizon space gradually began to vanish, and the body of Milton Cheney, who had already come to a complete stop on the path of transcendence, was gradually losing its perception of the outside world. At a certain moment, Milton Cheney's consciousness suddenly plunged into utter darkness. After his consciousness fell into darkness, Milton Cheney did not know that at this moment, his body also shattered. Time seemed to come to a complete halt and no longer progressed. When Milton Cheney's consciousness regained clarity, the environment around him once again became clear and familiar. In reality, the initial region of the transcendence path. Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, his brows were slightly furrowed, and his eyes flashed with contemplative thoughts. He was very aware of what had happened, but even though he knew, he was somewhat at a loss to understand. Becoming a beyond the horizon is undoubtedly the ultimate pursuit of countless transcendence. But in this fate simulation, the being he possessed voluntarily gave up the chance to become a beyond the horizon. After reflecting for a moment, Milton Cheney still could not figure out the reason. After all, at this point in reality, he could only be considered as having just become a transcendent, and he was only at the 8th stage of the wizard immortal realm. The gap between him and the realm of beyond the horizon was far too great. Whatever might be on the minds of such beings, even Milton Cheney could not discern. However, this fate simulation did show Milton Cheney a different aspect from the previous ones. This fate simulation had similarities with the first two, but they were sparse. But the main theme had not changed. That is, experiencing an ascent to beyond the horizon. If there was one commonality in the three fate simulations, it was that in all three, Milton Cheney entered the beyond the horizon space, without exception. The next moment, before Milton Cheney could continue pondering, the light blue light curtain that signified the simulator appeared again before him. The mechanical voice of the simulator also echoed in his mind. Fate simulation has ended, the 39th fate line has been integrated. Award a part of the inherited memory from within the fate simulation to the host. The instant the simulator's mechanical voice disappeared, a vast expanse of memory suddenly emerged in Milton Cheney's mind. These memories belonged to the original host within the fate simulation. The memories of his own experiences in the fate simulation were always fully retained after each simulation. What the simulator awarded was not the memories of his own experiences, but those of the original host of the body he inherited in the fate simulation. Although the memories retained after the fate simulation were only a part of what the original host possessed, a part of the memories was actually more than enough. Because the gap in realms was vast, even the casual memories of such realms could bring immense benefits to Milton Cheney. For him, the memories retained after each fate simulation were of tremendous help, because they greatly assisted him in reality with the higher realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path. Of course, it would take an extremely long time to fully digest such vast memories. To completely assimilate the memories retained this time in reality would require at least 1 or 2 years of time in reality. Chapter 758. Moreover, these 1 to 2 years were time he had used entirely to digest these memories. It's just a pity that the original host actively gave up the opportunity to ascend to the beyond during this fate simulation. After organizing these memories, Milton Cheney whispered to himself. If he had managed to become one of the beyond during this fate simulation, it would have been an immense help to him in reality. At the very least, at some future moment, when he would ascend to the beyond, he wouldn't be completely inexperienced and unfamiliar. However, the fate simulation had already ended, and feeling sentimental about the results at this point wouldn't change anything. With that in mind, Milton Cheney thought no further. He put aside the distractions in his mind, then closed his eyes and began to digest the inherited memory the simulator had retained for him after the simulation ended. Time slowly passed, and in the blink of an eye a year had gone by. Within the path of transcendence, the seated Milton Cheney opened his eyes. The digestion of memories went smoothly without any unexpected incidents. In just 1 year, Milton Cheney had completely digested all the inherited memory retained by the simulator after the fate simulation ended. It must be said, just as Milton Cheney had anticipated, this segment of memory was of great help to him. The memory, once preserved, would not be lost. The next moment, Milton Cheney's thoughts stirred, and the light blue light curtain that represented the simulator appeared before him. Text simulation count 1. Fate simulation count 2. Would you like to start a text simulation? Yes. Without any hesitation, Milton Cheney immediately initiated another text simulation he had accumulated. In the following moment, after selecting the character for this text simulation, the light blue light curtain began to change. Time slowly moved on. On the light blue light curtain, black characters gradually appeared one after another. After a short while, these black characters, representing the text simulation, filled the entire simulator panel. Milton Cheney looked at the simulator's light curtain with a calm gaze. His expression was indifferent since he had experienced far too many text simulations. Simulation ends, please choose your reward. Maintain state or preserve sorcery or retain memory. About half a 2-hour period later, the text simulation ended smoothly. Maintain state. Without any hesitation, Milton Cheney chose to maintain state with just a thought. He no longer needed to retain memory. After all, the help this text simulation had given Milton Cheney in terms of memory was not particularly significant, and his understanding of the path of transcendence was definitely much more than what he had during the text simulation. If he hadn't experienced 3 fate simulations, he might have chosen to retain memory. But now, he no longer needed to. After all, the memories he experienced during the text simulation couldn't compare to the memories he had retained from the fate simulations. The moment he chose to maintain state, Milton Cheney could clearly sense a significant improvement in his realm. Although he was still an 8th stage wizard immortal, he was no longer at the beginner stage of the 8th stage wizard immortal. Upon his breakthrough to the 8th stage wizard immortal, Milton Cheney's lifespan had gained a substantial increase. This also meant that the time in the text simulation was now extended. Previously, a text simulation that could end in the time it took 3 incense sticks to burn now required half a 2-hour period, such was the difference. Of course, for Milton Cheney, the advantages were many. At least the improvement he gained after choosing to maintain state at the end of this text simulation was significant. If dividing the 8th stage wizard immortal state into 9 levels, Milton Cheney was now at the 4th level, which is the mid-stage of the 8th stage wizard immortal. After briefly sensing the advancement in his realm, Milton Cheney redirected his gaze to the simulator panel. The light blue light curtain that represented the simulator was still floating there, not hidden by Milton Cheney. Milton Cheney's eyes rested on the section representing the fate simulation count. Fate simulation count 2. You meet the conditions for starting a fate simulation, would you like to start it? All that remains are these last 2 fate simulations. Seeing the prompt on the light curtain, Milton Cheney felt stirred. After ending the recent accumulation of text simulations. At this moment, the only remaining simulation counts for Milton Cheney were these 2 fate simulations. As Milton Cheney anticipated, if he could utilize these last 2 fate simulation counts, the simulator should be able to commence the upgrade smoothly. In the next moment, Milton Cheney no longer dwelled on these thoughts. His consciousness stirred, and he murmured to himself. Initiate fate simulation. The instant the thought to initiate the fate simulation arose in Milton Cheney's heart, his consciousness once again plunged into darkness. While all senses were blocked at this moment, the consciousness trapped in darkness continued to function normally. This novel sensation was not the first time Milton Cheney had experienced it, so at this moment, his heart did not give rise to any other emotions. Fate simulation begins to weave, detecting 78,619 fate threads of the host. Successfully attached to the 331st fate thread, fate simulation initiated, wishing the host a pleasant experience. In the next moment, the sense-deprived Milton Cheney suddenly perceived 2 voices echoing in the depths of his soul. As the voices faded, his consciousness completely subsided. The world came to a halt, signifying the end of this fate simulation. Although the world had stopped, time continued to elapse. In the universe, an unknown amount of time passed. Perhaps a moment, or perhaps countless eons. But in reality, only a moment had truly passed. In the real world, Milton Cheney's consciousness regained clarity. The surroundings became familiar once more. Within the starting area of the Transcendence Path, Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes, still retaining a hint of understanding within them. This time, the fate simulation returned to the form he was most familiar with. Unlike the last fate simulation, it was very similar to the previous 2. In this fate simulation, he still ended the experience at the moment of breaking through the beyond the horizon space. The light blue light curtain reappeared in front of him. And within his mind, the mechanical voice of the simulator rang out. Fate simulation has ended, the 331st fate thread has been retracted, rewarding the host with a portion of the inherited memory from within the fate simulation. The moment the simulator's mechanical voice ceased, a vast memory appeared in Milton Cheney's mind. Without a doubt, the retained memory was still part of the original inhabitants' memories from within this fate simulation. Time flowed gently, and in the blink of an eye, a year passed. The memory of the original inhabitant from within the fate simulation was completely assimilated by Milton Cheney. Without hesitation, Milton Cheney once again summoned the simulator's light screen. Fate simulation count 1. Meets the conditions to commence fate simulation, would you like to initiate the last fate simulation? Milton Cheney murmured to himself as he looked at the black characters emerging on the light screen. All the simulation counts were now reduced to this sole fate simulation. Without a doubt, after the conclusion of this fate simulation, all the questions he had would be answered. No longer hesitating, he would come to know whether the simulator would upgrade or not after this fate simulation ended. Initiate fate simulation. Milton Cheney murmured to himself and initiated this final fate simulation. His consciousness once again sank into darkness. Fate simulation begins to weave, detecting 78,618 fate threads of the host. Successfully attached to the 3rd fate thread, fate simulation initiated, wishing the host a pleasant experience. The 3rd fate thread. Before his consciousness completely faded, Milton Cheney's heart stirred slightly. This seemed to be the foremost fate thread he had attached to during the 5 fate simulations. However, as to the significance of the fate threads, Milton Cheney still was unclear at this time. Chapter 759. With the initiation of the fate simulation, time within reality also came to a complete standstill. Milton Cheney's consciousness sank into a long silence as well. It's uncertain how much time had passed, perhaps a moment, or perhaps countless years. Fortunately, the passage of time held no meaning for Milton at this moment. After all, once his consciousness had completely submerged into silence, he was entirely unable to perceive the passing of time. Years passed. The consciousness of Milton gradually began to awaken from its silence. This also signified that his final accumulated fate simulation had been activated, and he returned to the world represented by the simulation. Just like the experiences after the arrival of previous fate simulations. At this moment, a massive flood of memories surged within Milton Cheney's mind. The memories suddenly appeared in his mind, but fortunately, Milton was prepared the instant his consciousness recovered. After all, this wasn't his first experience with the fate simulation. Including the previous sessions of fate simulation, this was now the 5th time he had initiated it. Therefore, compared to the previous times when his consciousness recovered within the simulation, the speed at which Milton processed these memories was much quicker now. The inherited memories within the simulation were vast. At first, Milton merely sorted through these memories briefly. However, as time gradually passed, these organized, foreign memories became increasingly clear. Of course, to thoroughly digest these memories in a short period of time was naturally impossible. It was highly unlikely for him to accomplish that in this fate simulation, as he hadn't managed to fully assimilate all the inherited memories in his previous simulations. Moreover, even if he could digest all the memories, the benefit to Milton wasn't as significant as one might imagine. No matter how many memories he digested, only a part of them could be retained upon returning to reality. Even if he fully assimilated all inherited memories in this fate simulation, he would still only be able to hold onto a portion of those memories upon his return to the real world. Having undergone 4 simulations already, Milton was well aware of this. Nevertheless, even just digesting a portion of the memories, although not easy for Milton, wasn't exceptionally difficult either. At least, while processing these memories, Milton didn't feel the slightest bit of discomfort. Just as in the previous instances of fate simulation. In this simulation, after the recovery of his consciousness, Milton Cheney could distinctly sense that he had once again taken occupation of another person's body. The gradually assimilated fragments of memory in his mind made clear the identity of the original owner of this body in the simulation. Tens of thousands of years seemed almost to have passed in the blink of an eye. During these tens of thousands of years, Milton processed only a portion of the more important memories. At a certain moment, Milton opened his eyes. He didn't deliberately perceive his surroundings. For the memories inherited in his mind made him keenly aware of his current predicament. At the moment, he was lying flat on a pale glowing jade bed. The surrounding environment was shrouded in darkness. As if apart from him, there were no other life forms in this place. And indeed, it was so. The universe's sea has shattered, the true spirit is crushed, and this body seems to be stripped of vitality completely. This simulation presents a situation utterly different from the previous simulations. Lying flat on the bed, Milton mused to himself. At this time, his brow furrowed slightly, not because he was contemplative, but because the sense of decay emanating from inside and out of this body made him extremely uncomfortable. Milton was certain that he controlled this body. But even with control, making the slightest movement was exceedingly difficult. Even a simple movement like moving a finger made Milton feel completely powerless. At this time, his consciousness was lucid, and his thoughts could function normally, but his body was nearly entirely decayed. The inherited memories in his mind were vast, yet the power contained within his body was virtually non-existent. This body, devoid of any cultivation. It's not that the cultivation was hidden or anything similar, it was truly absent. One could say that if the real Milton were here, he could easily destroy this body. Simply put, the body Milton inhabited was now nothing more than an empty shell. Inside this shell was an utter ruin. Yet curiously, although Milton could sense the decay of this body, he felt no pain whatsoever. Literally, no pain. After all, even an ordinary person would feel pain from an injury. But at this moment, Milton felt nothing of the sort. It was as though his sense of pain had been blocked. There could be many reasons for this phenomenon. However, Milton believed that there was a high likelihood he simply couldn't bear such pain now, therefore, the simulator automatically shielded him from it. After all, if not for the simulator, he would have been tormented with unbearable pain after inhabiting this body. Heir of the first universe sequence's 9th noble house, a sacrificial victim of a failed bid for the role of Sequence Lord. Chapter 760. The original owner of this body actually attempted to travel the path beyond the horizon, but unfortunately, he failed. Milton Cheney carefully explored a portion of the vast memories in his mind, feeling somewhat sentimental but without any particular emotion. After all, this was not his first time experiencing fate simulation. No matter what identity he assumed within the fate simulation, he was no longer too surprised. Compared to his previous fate simulations, the identity of the person he was inhabiting this time could be said to be the most powerful. Even compared to the first fate simulation, it was much stronger. Although he hadn't digested all the memories, Milton Cheney could still understand the memories contained within the identity of an heir to one of the 9 great families in the first universe sequence. But if that's the case, then this body seems to have no hope for transcendence. Could it be that fate simulation is not what I understand it to be? Unable to move his body, Milton Cheney could only lie in bed, quietly pondering. At this moment, he faced dire circumstances. Having lost his cultivation, and having already attempted to become a beyond the horizon, either point had already severed the hope of ascending beyond the horizon thereafter. Without the hope of ascending beyond the horizon, it meant that this fate simulation would inevitably be completely different from previous ones. The commonality found in each fate simulation would no longer exist after this one ended. After all, in the 4 fate simulations Milton Cheney had experienced before, he had entered the beyond the horizon space. Although he did not know whether he truly became a beyond the horizon during those simulations, at least he opened the beyond the horizon space. But this time was completely different. Milton Cheney, who could clearly sense the condition of his body, knew that it was impossible for him to open the beyond the horizon space in this fate simulation. Let alone opening the beyond the horizon space to attempt to ascend beyond the horizon, it was impossible even to restore his realm. Unless there emerged a variable in this fate simulation so unexpected that even Milton Cheney could not comprehend it. Otherwise, perhaps until the end of this fate simulation, Milton Cheney would always remain in this state. Therefore, what Milton Cheney had to do at this moment was simple, which was to wait. Fortunately, he did not need to wait too long, because if his senses were correct, this body would decay completely in no more than 700 million years if its condition did not improve. That is to say, Milton Cheney would truly end this fate simulation with death. The next moment, Milton Cheney, lying flat on the bed, banished the distractions in his mind and slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, as he silently waited, he could only choose to digest the inherited memories in his mind. After all, aside from digesting these vast memories, he had nothing else to do. Time flew, and 700 million years passed in the blink of an eye. Within this rapidly fleeing span of time, the condition of the body inhabited by Milton Cheney deteriorated further. At this moment, even without deliberate sensing, Milton Cheney could tell that he was not far from his end. But it must be said, it is quite incredible that this body, having lost all cultivation, could still persist for tens of billions of years. This was already somewhat beyond Milton Cheney's understanding. Fortunately, such understanding was not necessary for him, for he was still far from that realm. Upon the jade bed, Milton Cheney opened his eyes. In his mind, the memories he had digested were now many. After all, having spent 700 million years digesting the inherited memories, even though the flood of memories was vast, Milton Cheney had digested a large part of it. This body seems to have only a few days left before it completely decays. Is this fate simulation just to possess this body for a while? Milton Cheney muttered to himself. He was somewhat puzzled. In fact, he could have chosen to end this fate simulation earlier, but Milton Cheney did not do so. Because he was actually anticipating a change. After all, this fate simulation was simply too different from the previous ones. The fate simulation had been activated for the 5th time to date, but up to now, he still had not grasped the true meaning of fate simulation. Was the fate simulation, which could be accumulated once per century in reality, merely to inherit a set of memories not his own? Although the memories were very helpful to him, Milton Cheney believed it should not be just that. Days had passed again. Milton Cheney could clearly sense that his life was approaching its end. It seems there won't be any surprises. At this moment, Milton Cheney murmured to himself. He had harbored certain expectations, so when the final moment actually arrived, he couldn't help but feel a tinge of disappointment. However, that emotion flashed through him only momentarily. After all, no matter how one put it, this was just one of the many fate simulations in his lengthy experiential journey through simulation, after all. In the future, he was destined to undergo even more simulations. By then, he might encounter more experiences that would take him by surprise. The next moment, just as Milton Cheney was about to actively end this fate simulation, his consciousness suddenly plunged into darkness. But Milton Cheney wasn't surprised. After all, it was normal for consciousness to fall into darkness for an instant when the simulation ends. But was it really just an instant? Milton Cheney did not know. Perhaps it was an instant, or perhaps it was an eternity. Nevertheless, when his consciousness regained clarity, his surroundings were no longer what he was familiar with. What is this? As consciousness returned, Milton Cheney was shocked. But before any other thoughts could rise in his mind, a segment of unfamiliar memory appeared within it. So that's how it is. The segment of unfamiliar memory wasn't vast, and the information it contained wasn't extensive. Thus, in just an instant, Milton Cheney had completely assimilated the strange memories. After digesting the memories, a look of realization crossed Milton Cheney's eyes. The body he inhabited had indeed thoroughly decayed, but his fate simulation hadn't ended with it. For the being Milton Cheney had embodied in this fate simulation, death was merely the beginning. A contingency plan non-existent in my own memories. Was it deliberately erased to prevent others from seeing through it? Sensing the new body he occupied, Milton Cheney talked to himself. The reason he was unaware of all this was because Milton Cheney, even after assimilating most of the original host's memories, didn't know that his true spirit could re-emerge in another person after death. Resurrection after a feigned death was something Milton Cheney hadn't considered before. Luckily, he hadn't rushed to actively end this fate simulation. The next moment, before any other thoughts could bubble up in Milton Cheney's mind, he suddenly lost control over the new body. Though he had lost control over the body, his consciousness still persisted. It was just that he had shifted from the perspective of a participant to that of an observer. This wasn't the first time Milton Cheney had experienced such a change. It was just more abrupt this time. Milton Cheney had no reaction to it. This abrupt shift made Milton Cheney suppress the thoughts that wanted to emerge in his mind, and at that instant, he quietly observed the changes in the external world from a third-person point of view. As expected, just as he had anticipated, not long after he lost control of his body, the space around him began to warp. The void black hole, the entrance to the beyond the horizon space, suddenly appeared. From a third-person perspective, Milton Cheney watched as his body stepped into the beyond the horizon space. Indeed, the path to ascending beyond the horizon is something one cannot avoid in every fate simulation. Chapter 761. Within the void of the beyond the horizon space, the figure of Milton Cheney appeared here. The next moment, Milton Cheney suddenly paused. Indeed, after arriving in the beyond the horizon space, Milton Cheney's control over this body had been restored. This also meant that the step of stepping onto the transcendence path and reaching the beyond required him to helm the journey himself. I didn't expect that even in this fate simulation, I still have the opportunity to reach the beyond. This body has already reached the limit of the 9th sequence on the path of cultivation, and the success rate of reaching the beyond seems quite high. Milton Cheney muttered to himself. There was a trace of emotion in his heart, but he quickly adjusted his mindset. After his feigned death and resurrection, he had already been prepared, it was just somewhat sudden. Whether or not he could successfully reach the beyond in this fate simulation was not something Milton Cheney was particularly concerned about. After all, he was only in the simulation at this time, not in reality. After the fate simulation began, he had already digested the memories of the process of reaching the beyond through inherited memories. The original owner's new body had never reached the beyond, but the once decayed body did have an experience of reaching the beyond. Having memories of relevant experiences could increase the chances of success for Milton Cheney in reaching the beyond. Of course, even if he could successfully reach the beyond in this fate simulation, it wouldn't cause a significant impact on him in reality, at most giving him a bit more experience. In reality, he was still far from being able to reach the beyond. He still had a long path to walk. Though fate simulation was precious, having gone through it numerous times, Milton Cheney knew well that the ultimate benefit it could bring him would only be some memories. However, this fate simulation did surprise Milton Cheney. After all, in the numerous fate simulations he had experienced before, there had not been a situation like this. But even so, Milton Cheney still treated this fate simulation as an accumulation of experience. This kind of experience would only appear in a fate simulation, and at no other time would he have such an opportunity. Therefore, Milton Cheney naturally treated it seriously. After all, perhaps one day in the future, he really might need the help of these experiences. Who knows when he might have the moment to reach the beyond in reality? When that time truly comes, the experiences of this moment might become precious. Such opportunity, though seemingly not precious, is actually very valuable. Apart from the simulator, there is no other way to let him experience reaching the beyond in advance like this. It is unlikely for others to have such an opportunity either. Because not everyone can have an external plugin as powerful as the simulator. The next moment, with the thought, Milton Cheney began to control his physical body, attempting to break through this void world according to the memories in his mind. Boom! A huge sound permeated this void world. The void world was naturally the beyond the horizon space. So strong is the power of this body, yet it can't easily break through the beyond the horizon space. Milton Cheney's heart moved slightly, somewhat surprised. He had thought that he could break the restrictions of the beyond the horizon space quite easily. Breaking through the beyond the horizon space was only the first step, and it was not difficult for Milton Cheney. Because at this time, he was not entering the fate simulation for the first time, nor was he the inexperienced himself of the past. Now, he was very experienced. 5 fate simulation opportunities had provided him with 5 experiences and memories of reaching the beyond, all real. He did not linger on these thoughts for long. The next moment, the experienced Milton Cheney decisively changed his methods. He began to accumulate the energy contained within his body. Compared to the body he controlled in the previous fate simulations, the energy contained in the body he controlled this time was clearly much more abundant. After all, in this fate simulation, his physical body was powerful to a truly extreme extent. In the previous fate simulations, the strongest energy contained within the bodies he controlled was only that of the 16th rank limit realm universe energy. But this time, the energy contained within the body he controlled far exceeded the 16th rank limit of the universe cultivator's realm. This is the advantage of the serial cultivation method. The 9th sequence was renowned throughout the universe, naturally much stronger than the ordinary path of cultivation. The difference was quite clear, and at least Milton Cheney could distinctly perceive the differences. So, in the time that followed, Milton Cheney began to wander in this void world, looking for the weakest places within the beyond the horizon space. After all, to reach the beyond, he must first break through this void world. Although it was not difficult, it would also take a considerable amount of time. Because to break through the beyond the horizon space, one must at least find an area where an opening can be made. Fortunately for Milton Cheney, it wasn't his first visit to the beyond the horizon space, and his experience was abundant. Time slowly passed by. Having gone through 5 fate simulations, it was natural for Milton Cheney not to wander aimlessly in the beyond the horizon space. During this time wandering through the beyond the horizon space, Milton Cheney was carefully observing every aspect of the environment within the space. Chapter 762. His current body possessed ample longevity, so Milton Cheney was in no hurry at all. At this moment, he did not wish to hastily conclude this fate simulation. Therefore, within the beyond the horizon space, Milton Cheney would not choose to break it as quickly as he had during the previous fate simulations. Instead, he was more focused on observing this space. After all, although the inherited memory of the original owner in the simulation would not be retained in its entirety after the simulation ends, the memories he experienced within the simulation would not be lost. Having embarked on the journey to beyond the horizon, Milton Cheney had also gained complete control over this body. So now, naturally, his goal was to maximize his gains. The beyond the horizon space differed from the worlds Milton Cheney understood in reality, but it might potentially have a real impact on him in reality. The more he understood about the beyond the horizon space now, the richer his future experiences would be. This world, which existed purely because of him, might in the future truly come into existence because of him, and not because of the body he inhabited in the simulation. Roaming within the beyond the horizon space, the energy within Milton Cheney's body was also accumulating slowly. The accumulation of energy was slow, and this was deliberate on Milton Cheney's part. It seems that every time I choose to ascend beyond the horizon space that comes into being is exactly the same. Milton Cheney recalled his previous fate simulations and pondered quietly. This was indeed something he hadn't paid attention to before. In previous fate simulations, Milton Cheney didn't care about these things, and he just broke through the beyond the horizon space to end the fate simulation as if completing a mission. There was indeed very little contemplation about the beyond the horizon space. This time, Milton Cheney had ample longevity and was very deliberate in pondering these issues, so naturally, he thought of these matters. As he pondered in his heart, thoughts constantly surged in his mind. While thinking, Milton Cheney was also closely observing the environment of the beyond the horizon space. As time slowly passed, Milton Cheney eventually confirmed the conclusion he had reached. That's right, every time he ascended beyond the horizon space he entered was completely identical, without the slightest change. Could this mean that if he, in the future, chose to ascend beyond the horizon in reality, the beyond the horizon space he would enter would be no different from the one his simulated body entered during the fate simulation? If this were really the case, then this would definitely be good news for Milton Cheney. After all, this meant that the experiences he accumulated during the fate simulation were genuinely useful. But whether or not this was as he had pondered, Milton Cheney could not be 100% certain. To draw a conclusion, he could only wait until the moment in the future when he truly entered the beyond the horizon space in reality to find out. In fact, there was no way to verify any result, regardless of the method. However, Milton Cheney felt there was a significant possibility. Since he initiated the fate simulation, his luck in the subsequent 5 fate simulations seemed quite good. Whether before or now, Milton Cheney actually believed in luck and destiny. The energy from the cultivator of the 9th sequence within him continued to accumulate quietly, seeming almost to reach a critical point. But Milton Cheney was not too anxious. Even if the energy truly accumulated to the limit, it did not mean it had to be released immediately. He had yet to finish observing this beyond the horizon space, so even though he could break this beyond the horizon space, Milton Cheney would not choose to do so. After all, if this fate simulation was like those he had experienced before, it was quite possible that upon breaking the beyond the horizon space, the simulator would forcefully end this fate simulation. This scenario had occurred more than once. In the 4 fate simulations he had experienced previously, except for the 3rd fate simulation where he did not go through the process of breaking the beyond the horizon space, the end of the other 3 simulations occurred because he broke the beyond the horizon space within the simulation. There must be some regularity to this. But whether breaking the beyond the horizon space was key to this pattern, Milton Cheney could not be 100% sure. After all, it could also be other factors that led to the end of the fate simulation, and breaking the beyond the horizon space might just be a coincidence. For example, perhaps it was not because he chose to break the beyond the horizon space that the fate simulation ended, but because he failed to break the space, failing the first step in ascending beyond the horizon, resulting in the end of the fate simulation. This possibility also existed, and even had a not low chance of being true. Failure, too, might be a critical part of fate simulation's end. Of course, as to what the reason is, Milton Cheney couldn't be certain, nor could he verify it right now. Milton Cheney didn't want to take the risk. Having finally observed, during this round of fate simulation, what the beyond the horizon space one enters after climbing to the other shore was really like, he naturally wouldn't take any risks. If he lost this opportunity, perhaps there wouldn't be such a good chance in the future. After all, he had only experienced fate simulation 5 times in total. Whether fate simulation was as pleasant as he had experienced is still up for debate. After all, the number of fate simulations was simply too small. Time slowly passed, and what seemed like eons flashed by in an instant. The energy accumulated within Milton Cheney's body had long reached its limit. However, Milton Cheney was not in a hurry to release this powerful energy. It seems that in this round of fate simulation, my thoughts have not been influenced at all. Within the beyond the horizon space, Milton Cheney murmured to himself. This time his thoughts hadn't been influenced at all, and this was something Milton Cheney could be certain of. Then the reason he had been influenced before became quite clear, and it was very likely due to too low a realm. Climbing to the other shore never involved shortcuts, for every gain there must be a loss. A moment later, Milton Cheney stopped pondering it. He had observed enough of the beyond the horizon space, it was time to confirm another speculation in his mind. That was whether the end of fate simulation was caused by a failure to break through the beyond the horizon space or simply because breaking through it would result in the end of the simulation. Next moment, Milton Cheney gathered all the energy he had accumulated within his body at one point and shot it at the barrier of this void world. The void world was still the same void world, without the slightest change. The energy he had built up and then released seemed to disappear into thin air. But having attempted to break through the beyond the horizon space 4 times before, Milton Cheney knew this was only the calm before the storm. Milton Cheney continued to observe his surroundings closely. Finally, after 2 instants, change occurred. A force of attraction appeared out of nowhere above Milton Cheney's body, almost identical to what had happened during the previous fate simulations. In the next instant, his consciousness was once again engulfed by darkness. The world seemed to freeze at a certain moment, but time would not stop its passage. In the universe, who knows how much time had passed, perhaps a moment, or perhaps countless eons. No matter how many eons had passed in the universe, in reality, only an instant had passed the moment Milton Cheney opened his eyes. Milton Cheney's consciousness regained clarity. At this moment, his perception of the surrounding environment once again became sharp. In reality, the starting area of the transcendence path. Milton Cheney's expression was calm, but his eyes held a hint of realization. The question had an answer, and it was impossible for him to fail at breaking through the beyond the horizon space within fate simulation, yet the simulation had still ended. In the next moment, the familiar light blue light curtain of the simulator appeared in front of him. The mechanical prompt of the simulator also echoed in Milton Cheney's mind. Fate simulation has ended, the third fate line has been consolidated. Rewarding host with a portion of the inherited memory from within fate simulation. Before Milton Cheney could muse further, another mechanical voice sounded in his mind. Without a doubt, this mechanical voice signified the simulator upgrade. Chapter 763. Wizard's Life Simulator 7.0 begins upgrading, with an estimated upgrade time of 4,800 hours. The inevitable has arrived. Just as Milton Cheney had anticipated, after he had used up all his accumulated simulation counts, the simulator finally began to upgrade. Hearing the mechanical voice in his mind, Milton felt a slight stirring in his heart. For he noticed something different about this simulator upgrade compared to the last one. Upgrade time, 4,800 hours, which is 200 days. This is different from before. The previous upgrades of the simulator seemed to take 2,400 hours. The time has doubled this time. Could it be that two upgrades are happening simultaneously? Milton pondered quietly to himself. The upgrade time for the simulator had already changed once before, and now, it had changed again. Since the simulator had undergone a change, extending the upgrade time. Could that mean this simulator upgrade was in some way different from the previous several upgrades? After all, after the last change in upgrade time, he had gained the new simulation type, fate simulation. Milton had his speculations. However, whether this upgrade of the simulator was as he had guessed, that remained unknown. After all, a change in the simulator upgrade time didn't actually signify anything, this was only the second time that there had been a change. It might well be coincidental. But verifying his guess was very simple. All Milton needed to do was wait quietly for 200 days on the Transcendence path. Once the simulation upgrade ended, everything would become clear. For Milton at this time, who was in the real world, 200 days was but a fleeting moment. After all, whether in reality or in simulation, he was not lacking those 200 days. The next moment, Milton concealed the light blue light curtain floating before him and suppressed the jumble of thoughts in his heart. It was naturally impossible for him not to be curious about what changes the simulator might undergo after the upgrade. But no matter how curious Milton was, he still had plenty of time to wait. Idle speculation was of no use, it was better to wait quietly for the final outcome. Time never stops flowing, not even on the Transcendence path. In the blink of an eye, 200 days passed. Inside the Transcendence path, Milton slowly opened his eyes. His face was calm and his demeanor indifferent, yet in the depths of his eyes lay a hint of anticipation. The next moment, just as Milton opened his eyes, the familiar mechanical voice rose in his mind, signifying the completion of the simulator upgrade. Wizard's Life Simulator 7.0 upgraded successfully. Congratulations to the host on using Wizard's Life Simulator 9.0. Text simulation times accumulation time changes from 2 years to 100 years. Reincarnation simulation count accumulation time changes from 8 years to 500 years, true body simulation count accumulation time changes from 16 years to 1000 years, and fate simulation count accumulation time changes from 100 years to 10,000 years. Text simulation opens new function. After the text simulation ends, you may retain both memories and realm. You can stack up to 5 text simulations, allowing your simulated self to inherit all memories from reality, excluding memories about the simulator. Reincarnation simulation opens new function. Open 2 new layers of the universe worlds available for the host to reincarnate into. After stacking 5 reincarnation simulation counts, you may fully integrate consciousness and realm, retaining your real realm as you enter the reincarnation world. After stacking 10 reincarnation simulation counts, you may have 1 chance at rebirth within the reincarnation simulation. True body simulation opens new function. After the true body simulation end, you can continue with the previous true body simulation at the start of the next one without using additional true body simulation counts. Fate simulation opens new function. Fate simulation barrier lifted, specific effect unknown, requires the host to explore by themselves. Sequence after sequence of mechanical voice sounded in Milton's mind. A flicker of surprise passed over Milton's usually impassive face, but it quickly returned to normal. Indeed, this upgrade of the simulation advanced by 2 levels at once. After absorbing all the information from this simulator upgrade, Milton felt a slight sense of wonder. This simulator upgrade was, just as Milton had speculated, 2 simulator upgrades stacking together. Text simulation, reincarnation simulation, true body simulation, all underwent new changes after the upgrade. Even Fate Simulation, which had only been introduced after the previous simulator upgrade, had new changes this time around. However, the changes with this simulator upgrade are quite substantial. Milton murmured to himself. First, there was the text simulation, the accumulation time of which had, after this simulator upgrade, increased 50-fold. From originally needing just 2 years to accumulate a text simulation, now it required 100 years. While 100 years might not seem like a long time to Milton, who in the real world was measured in eons. Chapter 764. However, such a significant increase all at once was still unexpected for Milton Cheney. It wasn't just the accumulation of text simulation times, reincarnation simulation, true body simulation, and fate simulation that had greatly extended with the simulator upgrade. Text simulation can now inherit both realm and memory at the same time, which seems to be akin to an alternative form of true body simulation. Milton Cheney muttered to himself. After the text simulation update, it became possible to inherit both the memories and realm from the simulation upon its conclusion. This was exactly the reward from the simulator after the end of a true body simulation. After a true body simulation end, Milton Cheney would inherit the realm and memories from within the simulation. It was foreseeable that, after the simulator upgrade, Milton Cheney's strength would enter a period of rapid growth. Moreover, the changes to text simulation following this simulator update were not limited to just this. The text simulation at this point could now be used in a cumulative manner. Although it could only be accumulated up to 5 times, for Milton Cheney this was already enough. After the simulator upgrade, initiating 5 stacked text simulations would allow him to inherit all memories from reality except for those of the simulator itself. This meant that his character within the text simulation would instantly become aware of many things. Previously, it was almost impossible to extrapolate realms within text simulation because his memory within the simulation was incomplete. But after this simulator upgrade, this would no longer be the case. After initiating stacked text simulations 5 times, his character within the text simulation would also be able to extrapolate the realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path. What's more, the choice between 2 personalities would not make his character within the text simulation so extreme. After all, a person cannot possess just a single personality. Having only one personality means that the person is very extreme. In previous uses of text simulation, many had failed because the character within the simulation was too extreme, leading to an inability to endure until the end of the lifespan. For Milton Cheney, this was naturally all upside, no downside. To put it simply, after this upgrade of the simulator, the text simulation would only benefit him without any drawbacks. This was different from the impact that the last simulator upgrade had had on Milton Cheney with text simulation. After contemplating the changes to text simulation, Milton Cheney's thoughts shifted slightly. He began to consider how much help the updated reincarnation simulation would provide him. Reincarnation simulation has opened 2 new universe layers, probably the 6th universe layer and the 5th universe layer, he thought. I wonder what the worlds within higher layers of the universe look like. The stacking effects of reincarnation simulation have also changed after the simulator upgrade, which is certainly good news for me, he reflected. Now, if I stack 5 reincarnation simulations together, I can enter the reincarnation simulation in a state similar to true body simulation. If I stack 10 times, I could even have the opportunity of rebirth within the reincarnation simulation. Milton Cheney silently mused, thoroughly pondering the matter. Compared to the changes in text simulation, the changes to reincarnation simulation seemed even more significant after the simulator upgrade. Even after fully digesting the implications of the reincarnation simulation changes brought by the simulator upgrade, Milton Cheney was quite surprised. The opening of new universe layers in reincarnation simulation had actually been anticipated by Milton Cheney. After all, with several past upgrades to the simulator, new universes had always been opened. As for the new universes, Milton Cheney was somewhat curious. However, this was because he had not yet reincarnated within the worlds of the new universe layers. Being completely unfamiliar with the 6th universe and the 5th universe, Milton Cheney's curiosity was piqued. It was precisely because of this unfamiliarity that Milton Cheney naturally didn't know what kind of help the 6th universe and the 5th universe would provide him. Beyond opening new universes, the new changes in the reincarnation simulation were the focus of Milton Cheney's attention this time. After the simulator upgrade, the other 2 new changes that emerged from the reincarnation simulation were immensely helpful to Milton Cheney. Following this update to the reincarnation simulation, the overlapping of 5 reincarnation simulations could now fully retain the realm and consciousness from reality to enter into the reincarnation simulation. Compared to before, it seemed there wasn't a significant difference. In reality, it was quite a substantial change. Because previously, it required accumulating 10 reincarnation simulation opportunities to achieve this effect. Of course, the time needed to accumulate the reincarnation simulations also increased. In truth, how long it took to accumulate the simulation count wasn't important, the simulations themselves were what truly mattered. Just as before, when he was at the 6th stage Wizard Immortal, he didn't lack time in reality. But he had never used 10 accumulated reincarnation simulations at once. Because the additional consciousness wasn't worth the deliberate effort of accumulating another 5 reincarnation simulations. With the extra 5 reincarnation simulation counts, he could completely start another reincarnation simulation with 5 counts stacked together. If the only change after the simulator upgrade was this, then Milton Cheney would certainly not have experienced any unexpected emotions. But that wasn't the case. After this simulator upgrade, the effect of stacking 10 reincarnation simulations together had drastically changed. Before the upgrade, accumulating 10 reincarnation simulation counts to start a reincarnation simulation had the same effect as entering into the reincarnation simulation with 5 counts after the upgrade. Now it was different. If Milton Cheney could now accumulate 10 reincarnation simulation counts to start a reincarnation simulation, then he could not only have all the powers from reality in the simulated world, but he would also get 1 resurrection opportunity after dying in the simulation. This was of tremendous help to him within the reincarnation simulation. After all, no one knows if an accident might occur in the reincarnation simulation, and perhaps this one chance at resurrection could lead to a huge gain for Milton Cheney. Moreover, this effect now only required stacking together 10 reincarnation simulations. Stacking 10 reincarnation simulations took merely 5,000 years. For the former Milton Cheney, 5,000 years might have been an incredibly long time. But for the current Milton Cheney, who had reached the 8th stage Wizard Immortal, 5,000 years were but a moment, whether spent in reality or in simulation. Exchanging 5,000 years for a chance at a reincarnation simulation with complete strength and the option to resurrect was simply too worthwhile. Forget 5,000 years, even if it took 50,000 years to accumulate such a simulation, Milton Cheney would consider it well worth it. After all, such simulation counts were of genuine aid to Milton Cheney. Following the simulator upgrade, Milton Cheney's mind overflowed with new ideas. Not only the text simulation and reincarnation simulation. He had also been reflecting on the changes that the true body simulation and fate simulation underwent after the upgrade. The changes to the true body simulation seemed small, but were actually significant. Previously, he needed to double the true body simulation count to retain a checkpoint to start from in the next true body simulation. But now that was no longer necessary. It might seem trivial to Milton Cheney, but in fact, the impact was enormous. Retaining 1 or 2 checkpoints might not be a big deal, but what about retaining dozens or even hundreds of true body simulation checkpoints? The gap in the required true body simulation counts was tremendous. Perhaps previously he needed tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of true body simulation counts, but now just tens or hundreds would suffice. However, what exact changes occurred to the fate simulation after the simulator upgrade, Milton Cheney hadn't really figured out. After all, the hints from the simulator were ambiguous. Chapter 765. Although Milton Cheney wasn't clear about what changes had occurred in the fate simulation after this simulator upgrade. The fate simulation had, after this simulator upgrade, accumulated the majority of simulation counts through the passage of time. Previously, it only took 100 years to accumulate 1 fate simulation count, but now it required 10,000 years, a 100-fold increase. If he wanted to understand what exactly had changed about the fate simulation, he might have to wait until after a 10,000-year cycle when Milton Cheney would truly experience the fate simulation. Within the transcendence path, Milton Cheney slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, he no longer dwelled on such thoughts. To truly know what changes occurred to the various simulation types after the simulator upgrade, nothing would compare to him having actually used these simulation counts. Time slowly passed, and in the blink of an eye, 100 years had gone by. It was also 100 years since the completion of the simulator upgrade. This also meant that the upgraded simulator had accumulated its first chance for a text simulation. Within the transcendence path, Milton Cheney, sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes, and a thought flickered through his mind. In the next moment, the light blue light curtain symbolizing the simulator instantly appeared and hovered in front of him. Milton Cheney didn't pay attention to the attribute panel section on the light curtain, his gaze immediately rested on the section representing the text simulation times. Text simulation count 1. Would you like to start the text simulation? Seeing that a text simulation count had been accumulated on the light curtain, Milton Cheney didn't hesitate. With a slight intention, he initiated the first text simulation accumulated after the simulator upgrade. As Milton Cheney had anticipated, the text simulation after the simulator upgrade would surely be of great help to him. Because in this text simulation, he could not only choose to retain realm or memories, but he could retain both the realm and memories simultaneously. But that wasn't all. In the new text simulation, he could pick 2 character traits at once. This would also mean that his character in the text simulation wouldn't be so extreme, and the probability of surviving to the age limit would be much greater. However, all of this was mere speculation until he truly used a text simulation for the first time. After all, he had yet to truly experience what the text simulation was like after the upgrade, to know how it differed from before. Therefore, facing the text simulation that was about to begin, Milton Cheney felt a hint of anticipation, or perhaps curiosity. Milton Cheney was very curious about what was different in the text simulation after the update and whether it would be as useful to him as he imagined. Text simulation starts. Please choose your character traits for this text simulation. Calm or agile or timid. Looking at the character trait options on the light screen, Milton Cheney hardly hesitated. Choose calm and agile traits. There was no need for further thought. In the blink of an eye in reality, Milton Cheney had already decided on the character traits he needed for this text simulation. He outright excluded the timid trait. Although it could allow him to live longer, it was significantly inferior compared to the previous 2 traits. This was his first text simulation since the simulator upgrade, so this text simulation was more of an experiment. It was an experiment to see if choosing 2 character traits would significantly influence his character in the text simulation. Without a doubt, the traits of calm and agile could better verify this point. The next moment, as soon as Milton Cheney made his decision, the light curtain floating in front of him began to display lines of black text. Milton Cheney's calm gaze remained fixed on the light curtain, not moving in the slightest. These lines of black text represented everything that happened during this text simulation. And at this moment, Milton Cheney's placid gaze stayed on the emerging lines of text. Time slowly ticked away, and the text simulation gradually approached its conclusion as time elapsed. But now, as Milton Cheney's realm was higher, the most evident change was that the wait time after starting the text simulation had increased. After all, the black text appearing to represent the experiences in the text simulation would surface for each year lived. If he could live to the limit of his lifespan within the text simulation, it would mean that he would spend 500 million years in the text simulation. Even though this was only a text simulation and not actually experienced time, cumulatively, it also took a significant amount of Milton Cheney's time. As time flowed, when the black text on the light screen ceased to emerge, it indicated that the text simulation had also come to an end. Text simulation ends, memories and realm from the text simulation have been preserved. Simulation ends, signifying that the content of this text simulation represented by the black text gradually vanished on the light screen. The familiar mechanical voice also echoed in Milton Cheney's mind. The next moment, not an especially vast expanse of memories appeared in Milton Cheney's mind. Because Milton Cheney was prepared, his expression didn't change in the slightest with the emergence of these memories. As time slowly passed, Milton Cheney also gradually assimilated the preserved memories from the end of the text simulation. Chapter 766. A moment later, Milton Cheney opened his eyes again. As expected, after this simulator upgrade, the text simulation has become even more helpful to me, he said. Milton Cheney mused to himself. At this moment, all the memories from this simulation had already clearly converged into the vast river of his memories. After all, Milton Cheney had reached the realm of an 8th stage witch immortal, and his consciousness was naturally immensely powerful. Even though he survived to the limit of his lifespan in this text simulation, retaining 500 million years of memory, such an amount of memory was actually not too overwhelming for Milton Cheney. These memories only took a moment to be completely assimilated by him. For Milton Cheney, these retained memories were like a small river. And now, he was no longer the person he had been. If the river of his memories used to be small, it was now a vast and mighty river. A small river flowing into a great one would naturally have no effect on Milton Cheney. However, the sensation of retaining memory this time seemed to differ from when he had previously finished a text simulation and actively chose to retain realm. In the past, whether it was when Milton Cheney was at a lower realm or at a higher one, the method of retaining memories after the end of the text simulation was different from the reincarnation simulation and true body simulation. Memories from the reincarnation simulation and true body simulation were directly present after their conclusion, rather than being retained. But it was different with the previous text simulations. In the past, retaining memories from a text simulation was akin to a method of inheriting memory. It was as if, during those reincarnation simulations, a new set of memories would suddenly appear in his mind, as inherited memories, instead of memories he inherently possessed. The previous text simulations were similar. After they ended and he chose to retain memories, they would be infused into Milton Cheney's mind in an instant. Neither of these two methods could be said to be better, they just felt different. Actually, these two ways of retaining memory didn't seem to have much of an impact on Milton Cheney. After all, in the end, they would all become his own memories. But after this simulator upgrade, there was a difference in how the text simulation memories were retained. Now, after the end of a text simulation, it felt as if he had truly experienced everything that had occurred within the text simulation, and not just inherited memory. If Milton Cheney wasn't clear that he had initiated a text simulation, he might have even thought that what he just finished was a true body simulation and not a text simulation. That's the difference. One was the feeling of personal experience, and the other was a direct inheritance of memory. They might seem indistinguishable, but there is a subtle impact nonetheless. Just as Milton Cheney had predicted, the option to retain technique had disappeared. After the end of the text simulation, Milton Cheney didn't even get the chance to choose. Following the conclusion, the memories and realm of the text simulation were directly retained in reality. This was definitely a good thing for Milton Cheney. After all, he hadn't yet cultivated to the limit of the 8th stage witch immortal. Whether he chose to retain realm or retain memory, there would be a sense of loss. After all, choosing one meant foregoing the retention of the other. But this situation would no longer occur in the future because after a text simulation, not only could he retain the realm, but also the memory, and even retain the memory as if he had personally experienced it. However, it seems that I did not continue to push the boundaries of the realm during this text simulation, Milton Cheney said to himself. The next moment, he understood why. After all, this text simulation did not include additional text simulation times, and to deduce the realm within the simulation, it would require 5 accumulated text simulation times. This was another feature added after the simulator upgrade. Fortunately, Milton Cheney hadn't reached the limit of an 8th stage witch immortal. Even after this text simulation, he was still a considerable distance from the limit of an 8th stage witch immortal. If converted to time, he would probably need at least 2 more text simulations. Which means roughly 1 billion years of time. Of course, this is the time needed in simulation, not in reality. In reality, 200 years of time was already sufficient. After all, at this moment, 100 years of text simulation could accumulate 1 simulation count, so 200 years of time could accumulate 2 text simulation counts. And within those 2 text simulations, as long as he could live to the limit of his lifespan both times, it meant he had 1 billion years of cultivation time. However, by that time, it would become very difficult for Milton Cheney to advance further. After reaching the limit of an 8th stage wizard immortal, to continue making progress, one must deduce the path of a 9th stage wizard immortal. For Milton Cheney, this was certainly no easy feat, even though he possessed the simulator, akin to an external plugin. Yet at this moment, Milton Cheney was not worried about these matters. After all, he was not the person he used to be. Milton Cheney, who had experienced several fate simulations, had memories inherited from those fate simulations in his mind. Although these memories seemed distant, they were of great help in opening the realms of the path of the witch immortal cultivation. With the help of these memories, coupled with the ample time in the simulations, Milton Cheney believed that even if his cultivation reached the limit of the 8th stage wizard immortal, it might not be as difficult to forge the path of a 9th stage wizard immortal. Of course, even so, it would still require a considerable amount of time. After all, memories were just memories, and whether or not they were helpful remained an unknown. He had not yet peered into that realm, and whether it would work or not would only be known after trying. As for the disappearance of the retain technique, it practically had no effect on Milton Cheney. Because even before the simulator upgrade, he had not chosen to retain technique after a text simulation in a long time. After all, it was of no help to him. The option to retain technique had almost become meaningless. Even the option to retain technique had been ignored by Milton Cheney for a long time. At this moment, a contemplative expression appeared on Milton Cheney's face, signifying that he was still immersed in thought. After all, this was only the first text simulation he had experienced. Of course, this refers to the first text simulation after the latest simulator upgrade. The conclusions that could be drawn from a single text simulation were very limited. Milton Cheney would not confirm all his conclusions with just one text simulation, at least it would take combining 3 text simulations to truly affirm some conclusions. After all, if one occurrence could be a coincidence, 2 or 3 would unlikely be coincidences. So at this moment, Milton Cheney stopped pondering further. With a thought, the light blue light curtain that floated in front of him disappeared in the blink of an eye. Milton Cheney closed his eyes again, and all the thoughts in his heart were reined in at that moment. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 200 years passed. In reality, within the path of transcendence. Milton Cheney opened his eyes once more. The light blue light curtain that represented the simulator was summoned by him again. This time, Milton Cheney deliberately accumulated 2 text simulation times. If everything went as planned, and in the text simulations he could still live to the lifespan limit, then not only could he validate his conclusions after the 2 text simulations but also allow his realm in reality to reach the limit of the 8th stage wizard immortal. Of course, the prerequisite was that in these 2 text simulations, he had to survive to the limit of his lifespan and could not slack off in his cultivation. Otherwise, 2 text simulation times might not be enough. Text simulation count, 2. Do you wish to start a text simulation? Start. Looking at the 2 text simulation times column, Milton Cheney did not hesitate and chose to start the text simulation. Chapter 767. Text simulation has begun. Please choose your personality trait for this text simulation. Brave or calm or ruthless? Gazing at the personality options displayed on the light screen, Milton Cheney pondered only briefly before making his choice. Choose calm and ruthless personalities. Having gone through numerous text simulations, Milton had experienced almost every personality there was to choose from. He was well aware of the impact each personality had on him during the simulations. Therefore, there was no need for extended contemplation. In the blink of an eye in the real world, Milton had already selected his 2 personalities. This was not his first text simulation after the simulator upgrade, so there was no need to be overly cautious. However, as he needed to cultivate to the 8th stage limit of the realm in these 2 text simulations, he still had to choose scenarios that would allow him to survive longer in the text simulation. The calm and ruthless personalities, undoubtedly, would serve this purpose better. The next moment, right after Milton made his decision, streaks of black text began to emerge on the light screen floating before him. Milton's gaze remained fixed on the light screen without moving in the slightest. The series of black text appearing on the familiar light blue light curtain signified the unfolding of events within the text simulation. It was this very series of black text that constituted the entire text simulation. Time slowly passed. The text simulation also gradually neared its end as time elapsed. At this point, Milton's realm was still quite high, which meant that the text simulation was not going to conclude too quickly. Now, after initiating the text simulation, the wait time was much longer than it had been previously. As time flowed, the last segment of black text solidified on the light blue light curtain, signaling the end of this text simulation. Text simulation ends, memories and realm retained from the text simulation. With the end of the simulation, all the black text representing the content of the text simulation dissipated from the light screen. The familiar mechanical voice once again resonated in Milton's mind. The next moment, a set of memories, not overly vast, emerged in Milton's mind. Luckily, Milton was prepared for this. After all, this was not his first text simulation experience. Even after the simulator upgrade, it was still his second text simulation. The retention of memories proceeded smoothly. After all, the text simulation had evolved. The manner in which memories were retained was as if he had personally lived through all the events within the text simulation. Before long, having thoroughly assimilated the memories, Milton reopened his eyes. Choosing 2 personalities indeed has a significant impact on me in the simulation. He mused to himself. If the experiences from his last text simulation were coincidental, the fact that he had now survived to the lifespan's limit in both simulations could no longer be seen as mere coincidence. Without the influence of the subconscious, the 2 personalities enormously impacted his existence in the text simulation. Fortunately for Milton, this impact was beneficial. Of course, this could also be because he had chosen his personalities well. If he had selected two extreme personalities simultaneously, he might have died earlier in the text simulation. The next moment, Milton stopped pondering these matters and, with a slight shift in consciousness, began to sense the changes in his realm. The 500 million years of cultivation within the text simulation transformed into a real improvement in realm, preserved in reality. Now, Milton could clearly perceive that his realm had significantly improved after the text simulation. As compared to before the simulation began, his small realm had risen at least 2 stages. Now, he was very close to the limit of an 8th stage wizard immortal. Of course, even so, reaching the limit of an 8th stage wizard immortal would still demand considerable time. But this was in relation to the real world. If converted to simulations, then he would merely need one more text simulation to suffice. With that in mind, Milton no longer hesitated and his gaze returned to the light screen floating before him. Text simulation count, 1. Would you like to initiate a text simulation? Yes. Observing the solitary remaining opportunity in the text simulation count, Milton did not hesitate to initiate the text simulation. Text simulation has begun. Please choose your personality trait for this text simulation. Carefree or cherishing life or sensitive. Gazing at the personality options on the light screen, Milton made his selection almost without hesitation. Choose carefree and cherishing life personalities. All 3 choices this time were actually acceptable, so it didn't really matter which 2 he selected, giving Milton no reason to hesitate. With the personalities selected, the familiar text simulation restarted once again. This was his 3rd text simulation since the simulator upgrade. The significance of this text simulation for Milton was straightforward. If he could reach the limit of the wizard immortal realm after this simulation, that would suffice. The cherishing life personality was quite apt. Having chosen this personality meant that, barring the unexpected, he was likely to survive to the lifespan's limit in this text simulation. Chapter 768. Under such a premise, he had a great possibility of reaching the limit of the 8th stage wizard immortal during this text simulation. After Milton Cheney chose his character, the light screen floating in front of him began to display lines of black text. Milton Cheney's gaze remained fixed on the light screen, unmoving. As time slowly passed, this text simulation also gradually drew to its conclusion with the passing of time. When the last line of black text was set against the light blue light curtain, this text simulation also came to an end. Text simulation ends, memory and realm from the text simulation preserved. Text simulation ends. Lines of black text began to dissipate from the light screen. The mechanical voice indicating the simulator's prompts also rang out in Milton Cheney's mind. The next moment, unfamiliar memories appeared in Milton Cheney's mind. This kind of memory, which felt as though one had experienced it personally, gave Milton Cheney an instant sense of being there. Fortunately, this wasn't his first text simulation after the simulator's update. A moment later, Milton Cheney, who had fully retained these memories, slowly opened his eyes. The memories in his mind were very clear. The advancement of his realm was also as Milton Cheney had anticipated. It had to be said that choosing the character in this text simulation was definitely the right move, as he almost effortlessly survived to the limit of his lifespan. At this time, his realm had reached the limit of an 8th stage wizard immortal. To continue advancing, he would need to push the limit of realm in the wizard immortal cultivation path up by another stage. However, this was not very difficult for Milton Cheney to achieve. After all, he had the true body simulation at his disposal. In the true body simulation, he could freely infer new realms within the wizard immortal cultivation path. Besides the true body simulation, he could actually also infer the realm of the wizard immortal cultivation path in the text simulation, but it would require the overlay of 5 text simulations. After all, only after the overlay of 5 text simulations could he possess all the memories within the text simulations. Of course, even overlaying 5 text simulations wouldn't take up too much of Milton Cheney's real-world time. Accumulating 1 text simulation only required 100 years of time, and accumulating 5 would just amount to 500 years. Keep in mind that now, a single true body simulation requires 1,000 years of real-world time. Let the text simulation and the true body simulation proceed simultaneously, striving to deduce the 9th stage realm of the wizard immortal cultivation path as soon as possible, Milton Cheney muttered to himself. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, another 200 years passed. Within the real world, on the path of transcendence, Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes, awakening from a state of emptied consciousness. In these 200 years, he hadn't been cultivating in reality. Instead, he had been adjusting his state. After all, to deduce the 9th stage realm of the wizard immortal cultivation path, one needs to break through many key points. Memories also needed to be sorted out. But the reason Milton Cheney woke up from the shackles of his consciousness was simple: the reincarnation simulation count following the simulator's update had been accumulated and was ready. The next moment, with a thought from Milton Cheney, the light screen representing the simulator emerged once again before his eyes. Milton Cheney's gaze rested on the simulation count section of the light screen. Text simulation count, 2. Reincarnation simulation count, 1. Proceed with text simulation. No. Seeing the prompt on the light screen to initiate the text simulation, Milton Cheney did not hesitate for a moment before mentally declining. After all, initiating a single text simulation at this point wasn't of much benefit to him anymore. At most, it would only provide him with some additional memories from the text simulation. It didn't matter much. It would be better to accumulate 5 text simulation times before starting the text simulation, so that he in the text simulation could deduce the realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path. Do you want to start the reincarnation simulation? Yes. This time, Milton Cheney didn't refuse. He was somewhat curious about the reincarnation simulation after the simulator update. After all, following the update, 2 additional universe layers had appeared within the reincarnation space, which he could choose to reincarnate into. The 6th universe and the 5th universe. What worlds lay within these 2 universes, and what they were like, filled Milton Cheney with a touch of curiosity. After all, having transcended in reality, his only means to reach the universe worlds were through the reincarnation simulation function of the simulator. If Milton Cheney claimed to be entirely devoid of curiosity, that would be utterly impossible. The next moment, as soon as Milton Cheney had the thought to start the reincarnation simulation, his consciousness went dark. When his consciousness regained clarity, his consciousness was already appearing in the reincarnation space. Within the reincarnation space, Milton Cheney's consciousness gradually became clear. His consciousness was floating right above the reincarnation space. From this perspective, Milton Cheney could clearly see the entire reincarnation space, and he had to admit, after the update, the changes to the reincarnation space were quite significant compared to before. Below the light spot that represented the 7th universe world, 3 differently colored light spots floated quietly. Below these 3 differently colored light spots, there were seemingly infinite light spots arranged together. Only 3 worlds in the 6th universe. There are so many worlds in the 5th universe, it seems even more than the worlds in the 9th universe. Milton Cheney mused to himself, with a slight surprise. He had not expected an entire universe to have only 3 worlds, given that the 7th universe had as many as 9 worlds. Of course, the 5th universe was much more typical, with its number of world light spots slightly exceeding that of the 9th universe. Seeing the 2 new universe layers added to the reincarnation space, Milton Cheney felt a slight sense of emotion. However, even though the number of worlds after the 6th universe was very few, the 3 world light spots belonging to the 6th universe layer appeared exceedingly large when reflected in the reincarnation space. They were like 3 luminous fireballs. The largest world light spot Milton Cheney had seen previously was in the 7th universe layer, representing the immortal realm. The world light spot representing the immortal realm was roughly the size of a sports field. It was already quite large, but it was far from comparable to the 3 worlds in the 6th universe. If the immortal realm were compared to a ping-pong ball, then each of the 3 worlds in the 6th universe could be likened to a basketball. The difference was enormous, and it was the sort of difference one could feel intuitively. Even with his consciousness fully awake, Milton Cheney was slightly shaken upon seeing these 3 luminous world spots representing the 6th universe. It's conceivable that the status of these 3 worlds must be much higher than I imagined, he thought. But compared to the 6th universe, the worlds of the 5th universe seem much more regular. Milton Cheney murmured softly to himself. At this moment, he hesitated because he didn't know which world to choose for his reincarnation. After all, these new worlds added after the simulator update were completely unknown to him. The shock lasted only a moment, and the next second, Milton Cheney began to contemplate. Which world should he reincarnate into? He understood the principle of gradual progress, so after some thoughts, he decided to reincarnate into one of the 3 worlds representing the 6th universe. He would not consider the worlds of the 5th universe for now. The next moment, Milton Cheney, who had hesitated for a while, stopped hesitating. His consciousness focused on the black light-emitting world spot. With a thought, his consciousness began to merge with this world light spot. The reason for choosing this world was simple. In terms of position, the black light spot world was situated in the middle of the three spots. Chapter 769. Time would not cease its flow, yet when the reincarnation simulation was initiated, time in reality would become relatively still. Before the end of the reincarnation simulation, there would be no passage of time in reality. It was uncertain how much time had passed, perhaps an instant, or perhaps an eternity. At a certain moment, Milton Cheney's consciousness was no longer engulfed in darkness. His consciousness gradually began to clear until he was completely awake. Once consciousness had awakened, Milton instinctively became aware of the state of his body. He was in good condition, and there was nothing wrong with his body. This was the first thought that surfaced in Milton Cheney's mind after awakening. The thought was sudden, for with such numerous reincarnation simulation experiences, he shouldn't have pondered these things first. But at this time, this was indeed what Milton felt. The memories in his mind also began to clarify. The memories hadn't changed, they were still his own, and no unfamiliar memories had inexplicably emerged. But what was strange was that although he had intact memories, his thoughts seemed to have some problems. This sensation had not occurred in Milton after a reincarnation simulation for a long time. After all, as his realm rose higher and his consciousness grew stronger, even if he used the reincarnation simulation count for a single journey to a new world, his thoughts would not be affected at all. But to say this was Milton's first time experiencing this sensation during a reincarnation simulation wasn't true either. The memories in Milton's mind were clear. When he had reincarnated in the crimson world of the abyssal realm, he seemed to have had this awkward feeling. Yes, awkward, extremely awkward. The same experience he had the first time he reincarnated in the abyssal realm. This feeling was like knowing everything yet being unable to think normally. Simply put, his consciousness seemed to be completely mismatched with his body. Why is this happening? Could this world be related to the abyssal realm? A simple thought pieced together in Milton's mind. He could distinctly sense the presence of his body but was unable to genuinely perceive its form. The unknown was a test. Fortunately, this was only Milton's first reincarnation into this world, and this reincarnation simulation was, after all, an experiment. Thus, even so, Milton was not anxious. He remained calm in his heart, carefully contemplating his current situation. His thoughts moved with difficulty, but they hadn't ceased entirely. The only thing was that, at this moment, Milton wasn't sure whether the body he had in this reincarnation simulation belonged to his original self. This world might indeed be connected to the abyssal realm. I've only felt this sensation in worlds within the reincarnation abyss realm. It could also be that my knowledge is too limited. In any case, this world is definitely not simple, Milton murmured to himself. Currently, he dwelled on his thoughts, and although it was strenuous, he managed to generate some simple ideas. However, chaotic thoughts were absent. After all, the conditions didn't permit it. With thought being limited, naturally, there would be no confusion in his mind. At this time, Milton could only ponder simple questions. Even so, Milton felt no discomfort. After all, he had experienced this situation a long time ago and had some experience with it. Milton quickly adapted to this sensation. But for Milton at this moment, the world into which he had reincarnated was a completely unfamiliar world. Beyond knowing that this world existed within the sixth universe, Milton was oblivious to everything else. He was even unclear on the world's name. But just as Milton was pondering how to quickly understand this world, some unfamiliar memories suddenly surfaced in his mind. These memories appeared at this very moment. Could there really be inherited memory? The instant the memories emerged in his mind, Milton was slightly moved. He had thought that this reincarnation simulation wouldn't have the occurrence of inherited memory. After all, when his consciousness had just awakened, no inherited memory had come. Milton knew very well from his experiences with reincarnation simulations that not every simulation would have memories present. Because inherited memory was unrelated to the simulator. If Milton had inherited memory after incarnating into a new world, it meant that other beings born in that world would likely also possess inherited memory. Therefore, Milton understood that not every world would grant inherited memory upon the birth of new beings. Even the worlds that carried memory inheritance were few. Originally in the ninth universe, before his transcendence, Milton had traveled many worlds of life during his true body simulation. Among these worlds, those with inherited memory upon the birth of living beings were rare. Of course, it wasn't non-existent. Creatures in the true spirit realm had inherited memory upon birth. Though slightly surprised, Milton quickly adjusted his consciousness. After all, having inherited memory was undoubtedly far more helpful to Milton than slowly exploring the world on his own. The next moment, Milton began to receive the inherited memories that had suddenly appeared in his mind. Chapter 770. Time slowly passed, and Milton Cheney had completely digested these memories. Abyssal realm. Milton Cheney murmured to himself. Thus, after the digestion of the memories was complete, Milton Cheney was not entirely unfamiliar with the world of his reincarnation. Among the inherited memories, many were of great help to Milton Cheney at that time. This world might indeed have a significant connection with the abyssal domain in the ninth universe. After all, the size of just this one world is already larger than 156 abyssal realms combined. At this moment, Milton Cheney mused to himself. He might have really guessed correctly. The reason was simple. Because this world was named the abyssal realm. However, unlike the abyssal domain, within the abyssal domain of the ninth universe, there are a total of 156 worlds. These 156 worlds include 12 great worlds, 36 middle worlds, and 108 little worlds. Each world has its own distinct differences. Yet when summed up, they seem more like a whole. Just like the Crimson World where Milton Cheney first reincarnated, it is one of the 12 great worlds of the abyssal domain. But the abyssal realm is different. If the abyssal domain is divided by worlds, then the abyssal realm is divided by layers. At this time, the layer where Milton Cheney was located belonged to the 43,253rd layer of the abyssal realm. All these were known to him through the inherited memory. Beyond these, there were many differences between the abyssal realm and the abyssal domain. In the abyssal domain, whether it be a great world or a middle world or even a little world, they actually represent a demon tribe. For example, the Crimson World where Milton Cheney had once reincarnated represents the demon tribe. Therefore, in the 156 worlds of the abyssal domain, there correspondingly exist 156 demon tribes. But the abyssal realm is different. The number of layers in the abyssal realm is almost infinite and difficult to quantify. Yet the number of tribes is extremely few. In his memory inheritance, the known tribes in the entire abyssal realm number only 3, with demons being one of them. Milton Cheney now knew that his body was no longer human but that of a demon. After all, humans do not exist in the abyss. Having gone through so many simulations, Milton Cheney's adaptability was exceptionally strong. By referring to the inherited memory, Milton Cheney quickly understood his current situation and identity. Sovereign of the 43,253rd layer, a 12th stage demon monarch, it seems this body of mine was born from the mother river of that sovereign. Then this body must also be considered one of that sovereign's offspring. No wonder the inherited memory I received is so detailed. After getting used to a single-threaded way of thinking, Milton Cheney's thought process sped up considerably. Within a brief moment, several thoughts swiftly passed through his mind. These thoughts were varied. But most of them pondered his identity in this reincarnation simulation. It's just a pity that the biggest convenience this identity could provide him was probably the inherited memory. As for other conveniences, there were almost none. Even though he was born from the mother river of the sovereign of the 43,253rd layer of the abyssal realm, a 12th stage demon monarch, it really wasn't that prestigious. Because this sovereign's mother river had given birth to too many demons. That is to say, this sovereign had too many offspring, and it was impossible to attend to all. The detailed inherited memory is probably the only help that this sovereign provides to his offspring. Of course, for Milton Cheney, this was enough. This reincarnation simulation was just a trial and error. By now, his understanding of this world was already ample, and frankly, his mission for this reincarnation simulation had essentially been completed. From now on, every minute he stayed alive was a bonus. Time slowly passed, and after a moment, Milton Cheney stopped pondering these things. No new thoughts emerged in his mind, and Milton Cheney began to try to control his newly acquired demon body. Although his thought processes felt somewhat sluggish, the control over his body was not hindered in the slightest for Milton Cheney. It was quite effortless, not much different from reality. His demon body, compared to the one he inherited when he first reincarnated into the Crimson Great World, was far superior in basic strength. One could say that his body was a second-stage demon from the very moment of its birth. After instinctively familiarizing himself with the control of this body, Milton Cheney began to wander around the maternal river where he was born. Although his body had the strength of a second-stage demon, it was still in the juvenile phase. Fortunately, the inherited memory in his mind made Milton Cheney very aware of his situation, otherwise, he might still be naively exploring this world. In Abyssal Realm, time is not counted, and who knows how much time had passed. In the Abyssal Realm, within the maternal river that rules over the 43,253 levels, Milton Cheney's body was roaming there. At this time, his consciousness was in a completely empty state. Roaming in the maternal river, he could hardly sense the passage of time. It's not that he couldn't sense the passage of time. Just like in the ninth universe's abyssal domain, the abyssal realm seemed to lack the concept of time altogether. Time was certainly passing normally, but this world just did not have the concept of a world. So Milton Cheney didn't know how much time has passed since his reincarnation into the abyssal realm. But Milton Cheney knew that a very long time had definitely passed. If measured in terms of real-world time, it must have been at least 1,000,000 years. However, this had almost no impact on Milton Cheney. His thought processes were slow, but the strength of his consciousness was not weak at all. The slowness of his thoughts was not due to his consciousness, but due to the demon body he inherited after reincarnating into this world. The demon tribe seemed to have an inherently slower thought process. Reincarnating into this world as a demon had not affected Milton Cheney's mentality at all. The essence of his consciousness remained unchanged. It was merely restricted by the body he inhabited. However, it is a bit strange, if going by the inherited memory, I should have reached the growth stage by now, yet I feel no such sensation. Could it be that this demon body of mine is quite special? His consciousness gradually recovered from its empty state and Milton Cheney mused to himself. This was the first time in years that new thoughts had emerged in his mind. However, encountering this situation only made Milton Cheney slightly curious, it was not incomprehensible. After all, even with inherited memory, it is impossible to cover everything completely. The inherited memory is intended for all demons, and it's unlikely for such memories to match perfectly with every individual. There are always exceptions. Milton Cheney was very aware that he was not an original inhabitant of this world but had arrived here through the reincarnation simulation. If there were some special circumstances with him, Milton Cheney would not be surprised at all. But if this problem wasn't solved, Milton Cheney might not be able to leave the maternal river even when this simulation ends. However, Milton Cheney was not sure how to solve this issue. Because he didn't even know the reason why it occurred in the first place. This was like a conceptual problem. Just like in Milton Cheney's previous life, the simplest way to define an adult was to see if the person was 18 years old or not. But can this method truly define maturity, and who decided that? Milton Cheney was facing a similar issue at this moment. His demon body was supposed to have reached the growth stage because enough time had passed. Reaching the growth stage meant that he could leave the maternal river. But Milton Cheney had no sensation whatsoever that he could leave the maternal river. Why this situation arose, Milton Cheney really had no idea. If only he could receive new inherited memory. Milton Cheney's heart stirred slightly. His understanding of the abyssal realm had been at a standstill for a long time. Chapter 771. Milton Cheney's thoughts emerged as his demon body continued to wander within the Demon Mother River. As time passed, Milton's understanding of the Mother River, which nurtured his demon body, deepened. Just like in the inherited memory. At this moment, he was in the most central region of one of the levels of the abyssal realm, within the primal Mother River of a demon monarch. It could be said that over half of the young demons nurtured within the 43,253 levels of the abyssal realm were born here. Milton had anticipated this situation during this simulation. After all, he had previously reincarnated in a world very similar to the abyssal realm. However, the abyssal realm was indeed different from the abyssal domain, and this reincarnation simulation was Milton's first true reincarnation within the abyssal realm. Time slowly passed, and he had grown very familiar with this demon body. After all, he had possessed this body since reincarnation and at least several million years had passed since then. Although it was his own body, it still required adaptation. Like humans, who need to adapt to their bodies when they are first born and can't immediately learn to walk. The demon tribe was no different. But these millions of years were enough for him to become accustomed to this demon body. Moreover, he possessed the inherited memory, which made the process of adjusting to the body even faster, so Milton had fully adapted to this body many years ago. In fact, whether in the reincarnation simulation or other simulations, there were very few things Milton couldn't adapt to. He had simply gone through too many simulation counts. He had experienced everything over and over again. At this time, he could be said to be very experienced. It's just a pity that the inherited memory seems to have some inaccuracies concerning the method of leaving the Mother River. Within the Mother River, Milton mused to himself. For him, being able to leave the Mother River was very important. After all, it would determine how he would develop in this world. At this moment, all his memories of the abyssal realm came from the inherited memory and lacked his own understanding. But there was no helping it, for after reincarnating into this world, he had not even seen a shadow of another demon. Although Milton understood why this was happening, it didn't mean he was content with passively waiting. Time waits for no one, and even though he was in the body of a demon in this reincarnation simulation, he still had a lifespan limit. If he couldn't leave the Mother River, then this reincarnation simulation would likely have no further gains. Remaining in the Mother River was not good for Milton. Milton wasn't so concerned about his safety anymore, because from the beginning of this reincarnation simulation, he didn't plan on living a long life. This reincarnation simulation was, frankly, just an experiment. At most, it would only waste one reincarnation simulation count, which Milton could completely accept. After all, with the simulator updated to the current version, he needed only 500 years to accumulate a reincarnation simulation count. This period might seem long, but to him in reality, 500 years was very brief. If his lifespan were an ocean, then 100 years would just be a scoop of water from it. It's just that there seems to be no other way to leave the Mother River, apart from waiting. Do I really have to keep waiting? Milton contemplated. Although he was not in a rush, he also didn't want to keep waiting passively. Certainly, he could wait 1,000,000 years, or even 2,000,000, but not 3 or 4 million. Passively waiting was not his style, he needed to find a way out as soon as possible. Finding a way out was not easy, after all, this world was the abyssal realm and not the abyssal domain, and his birthplace was the demon monarch's Mother River, not the demon Mother River of the Crimson World. They seemed similar, but the essence was different. At least, the station of the abyssal realm was much higher compared to the abyssal domain. After pondering for a moment, Milton failed to come up with a good solution. The reason was simple: this world was still new to him since his first reincarnation, and his knowledge of it was solely derived from the inherited memory. Without inherited memory, it was difficult to view an unfamiliar world with his reality-based recollections. After all, the universes were different. It would be foolish to validate the experiences of the 9th universe with those of the 6th universe. The limitations are still too great. Then I'll just wait a bit longer, and if I can't figure out a good way by the end of this reincarnation simulation, perhaps I should reincarnate into another world. Milton sighed inwardly. Honestly, he hoped the world he chose for reincarnation would be completely unknown. After all, if that were the case, he wouldn't have to contemplate so much. Time slowly elapsed, and although the abyssal realm did not keep time, Milton could still sense that a considerable amount of time had gone by. Chapter 772. At least another 1,000,000 years. At a certain moment, Milton Cheney, whose demon body roamed within the demon Mother River, felt a sudden concentration in his heart. An inexplicable feeling arose in his mind. When Milton Cheney was first reincarnated into this world at its birth, he had experienced the same feeling. And that was when he received the inherited memory. So Milton Cheney was very clear that this feeling was the sensation that accompanied the appearance of inherited memory. My demon body seems to have undergone no transformation, so why are there new inherited memories appearing? With the thought, Milton Cheney felt somewhat puzzled. He wasn't surprised by the new inherited memories, what surprised him was their sudden manifestation. After all, his demon body had not gone through any significant changes, at least not when compared to the beginning of his reincarnation into this world. The next moment, a stream of memories, not particularly vast, flooded into his mind. Milton Cheney had been in the reincarnation abyss realm for not just a year or two by now, and his demon body had long since adapted. Moreover, this wasn't the first time he was digesting inherited memories. Therefore, these memories were quickly and completely digested by Milton Cheney. Perceiving the inherited memory that remained, Milton Cheney was startled. This time's memories were entirely different from the first inherited memories. However, within the memories now retained by Milton Cheney, there indeed existed detailed methods on how to leave the Mother River. It was just that the method was somewhat different from what he had previously imagined. Selected. Does that mean this demon body of mine is also of the direct line among all the children of the demon monarch? A thought flickered through Milton Cheney's mind. Now he fully understood why new memory inheritance had suddenly appeared. He also understood why he, who should have left the Mother River long ago, had been unable to leave. The appearance of this new inherited memory indicates that my demon body has been noticed by the demon monarch. Perhaps it won't be long before I can leave the Mother River, even coming into contact with that demon monarch. Milton Cheney muttered to himself. He didn't feel any excitement, however. The 12th stage was strong, but not enough to trigger a change in his emotions. After all, in the fate simulations he had experienced, he had even inherited bodies of great cultivators of the 16th stage. The emergence of this inherited memory was actually within Milton Cheney's expectations. He just hadn't expected it to come so soon. After all, if demons are accompanied by inherited memories at birth, it stands to reason that more would appear later on. Moreover, this was verified within the experiences from the abyssal domain. Even so, Milton Cheney felt that this inherited memory wouldn't be the last new memory to inherit. If there is a first, there will naturally be a second, and if there is a second, there will of course be a third. The reason for Milton Cheney's thinking was actually very simple. It was because this set of inherited memories seemed to be incomplete. In his judgment, Milton Cheney seldom made mistakes. Compared with the first set of inherited memories, the content of this round of memories was extremely limited. Although he had inherited new memories, Milton Cheney still harbored many doubts in his heart. His understanding of this world was still not very extensive. Milton Cheney could be certain that as time continued to pass and as the realm of his demon body rose higher, new inherited memories would eventually come. Time was something Milton Cheney never lacked in the reincarnation simulation. Patience was also one of his most valuable qualities. Though still puzzled at heart, the moment for those doubts to disappear would eventually come. Why the memory inheritance was segmented was now very clear to Milton Cheney. It was intentional by the demon monarch. It could also be said that juvenile demons couldn't handle the vastness of the memories and could only inherit them in segments. What remains is to wait in silence, Milton Cheney whispered to himself. The appearance of this new inherited memory made Milton Cheney understand this world a bit more once again. His understanding of the demon race had also increased. At the very least, he no longer had to worry about the issue of realm advancement. Fortunately, Milton Cheney had never worried about this issue from the beginning. Although this was his first reincarnation in this world, he was no stranger to the ascension within the demon realm. In fact, even without this inherited memory, Milton Cheney's demon body was actually getting stronger gradually. The reason he couldn't perceive the change in his realm was simply because his improvement was too weak. After all, cultivation within the demon mother river yields very little feedback. To improve his realm, he would have to make significant progress after leaving the mother river. However, with the new inherited memory, he no longer needed to speculate wildly. Because inherited memory would not deceive him. Everything in the inherited memory represented the fundamental rules of the abyssal realm he had reincarnated into. If the inherited memory were false, then this world would no longer be real. At this moment, Milton Cheney set aside all the chaotic thoughts in his heart. He had fully assimilated the new inherited memory. What Milton Cheney needed to do right now was very simple, which was to do nothing. The most stable path lay before him, so naturally, there was no need for him to take any risks. The next moment, Milton Cheney's body once again roamed within the demon mother river. As his body instinctively roamed, Milton Cheney also sensed his own demon body. His demon body had undergone some changes compared to when he first reincarnated into this world, it's just that these changes were not obvious. Since Milton Cheney was only a nascent demon, his ability to perceive these changes was very weak. So it could be said that his improvement was minimal. With the inherited memory retained, Milton Cheney no longer had to guess. A complete memory was the greatest help to him. In fact, as time passed, even if Milton Cheney did not actively cultivate, his realm would still improve slowly. The longer the time, the greater his improvement would be. Over time, his perceptual ability would gradually become stronger. This had nothing to do with consciousness because a large part of the strength of perceptual ability represented the level of the demon realm. His perception of the surroundings would definitely change at some point, different from before. The ability to perceive would grow stronger with the passage of time. This was inevitable. The next moment, Milton Cheney completely set aside all the thoughts in his heart. Time does not count in the abyss, but the gears of time still rolled incessantly. It's just that within the abyssal world, the gears of time rolled extremely slowly. Milton Cheney had never neglected his perception of the surrounding environment. Gradually, Milton Cheney entered a state of emptiness in his consciousness. Finally, at a certain moment, Milton Cheney's perception of his surroundings changed anew. Milton Cheney might ignore time, but that did not mean time would completely stop. A change in perception meant that his realm had changed. At that moment, Milton Cheney decisively ended his state of empty consciousness. As for the reason, it was naturally because Milton Cheney's demon body had reached a critical point. At that moment, a rush of thoughts began to flood into Milton Cheney's mind again. Is this demon body about to undergo a transformation, and when the transformation ends, it will be time for me to leave the Mother River? Milton Cheney muttered to himself. He actually felt quite sentimental. The reason for Milton Cheney's sentimentality was simple: things were going too smoothly. Previously, he had been pondering how to leave the Mother River, but unexpectedly, with the emergence of the new memory inheritance, all the problems were solved in a very short span of time. It was as if the world itself was aiding him. It had to be said, his luck seemed to be getting better and better, especially in reincarnation simulation. The next moment, Milton Cheney's demon body began to transform. Milton Cheney could distinctly sense the changes in his body. And this change was so obvious that he did not need to actively sense it. During the process of his body's transformation, this change was directly perceived by him, which shows how pronounced it was. At this moment, Milton Cheney once again fully unleashed his intentions. Chapter 773. The transformation of a demon's body, once begun, cannot be interrupted. Of course, Milton Cheney wouldn't actively interrupt the transformation of his body either. After all, he had waited so long for this very moment. After the transformation of his demon's body was complete, he could leave the Demon Mother River. As for what form this world would take when that time came, Milton Cheney still didn't know. This was only his first reincarnation into this world. Even with the inherited memory, his understanding of this world was still quite limited. Milton Cheney didn't actively sense the passing of time, but time continued to flow slowly nonetheless. He didn't know how much time had passed. After all the changes had settled, Milton Cheney also recovered from his state of vacant mindfulness. The transformation of his demon's body was now complete. The truth was, Milton Cheney hadn't felt anything special during the whole process. Although it was his first reincarnation into this world, it wasn't his first time becoming a demon in a reincarnation simulation. Long ago, when he reincarnated into the Crimson World, he had become a demon within a simulation. So, he had actually experienced the transformation of a demon's body before. Even more than just once. Therefore, there was nothing unfamiliar to Milton Cheney in this process. He didn't feel any discomfort, nor did he feel any particular comfort. In fact, the transformation of the demon's body, including the ascent within the demon realm, seemed more like something that happened subtly and silently. Just as Milton Cheney had pondered before, it's hard to define when one's growth is in the youth stage, and when it reaches adulthood. The ascent within the demon realm is the same. Everything passed in silent influence. At this moment, this was the feeling Milton Cheney had. Even though he lacked special sensations, Milton Cheney was still very aware that the transformation of his demon's body was complete. Like when he was human, the sensations of his youth were completely different from those after reaching adulthood. Of course, the two couldn't really be compared like that. It was just somewhat similar. However, the transformation of his demon's body that decided whether Milton Cheney could leave the Mother River certainly wasn't that simple. After all, if there really wasn't any change, how could it be called an ascent in realm? At this moment, Milton Cheney clearly sensed a change in his perceptual ability. It became stronger. His awareness of his surroundings also became clearer. If he did not deliberately sense everything around him, it would be difficult for Milton Cheney to notice any change, but he actively used his perceptual ability. After directly sensing everything around him, Milton Cheney discovered that the change was so immense. Indeed, just as the inherited memory said, the reason I couldn't detect the presence of other demons is that my former self was too weak. Milton Cheney muttered to himself. After the transformation of his realm, Milton Cheney's awareness of his environment had completely changed, as if heaven and earth had turned upside down. In his perception, clusters of existence like black fog appeared within his awareness. These existences shrouded in black fog were actually other demons. Because Milton Cheney could clearly sense the life force contained within those clusters of black fog. Demons too had life, so naturally there would be life force emanating. At this moment, if Milton Cheney still didn't understand, all his previous speculations would have been in vain. In fact, other demons had always existed within the Mother River. It was just that the former Milton Cheney couldn't sense the presence of other demons. Now, after undergoing the transformation, Milton Cheney could naturally clearly sense the existence of other demons. However, for Milton Cheney, whether he could sense the presence of other demons didn't hold much significance. Because he was about to leave the Mother River. After he left the Mother River, the other demons within would naturally have no impact on him. My demon's body doesn't seem to be repelled by the Mother River, could my speculation have been wrong? A moment later, Milton Cheney mused to himself. Although the transformation of his demon's body was complete, he hadn't sensed any repulsion between his demon's body and the Mother River. It was as if even though his demon's body had entered adulthood, he could still stay in the demon Mother River just the same. This was actually quite strange. Just as with humans, who carry a child for 10 months, a newborn might stay inside its mother's womb for 10 months, or even a year, but it's hard to stay for 2 years. The Mother River behaves the same way towards a demon's body. However, at this time, Milton Cheney didn't sense any repulsion between his body and the Mother River. Sometimes, real perceptions are completely different from speculations. Milton Cheney could be wrong at times, too. A speculation, even if 99% true, as long as it isn't confirmed, can only be a possibility. On the other hand, a speculation, even if only 1% possible, once verified becomes reality. Because it becomes fact. At this time, Milton Cheney felt like a 99% speculation had been denied. Because in his perception, it seemed that he still couldn't leave the demon Mother River. Within the Mother River, Milton Cheney frowned slightly. Chapter 774. At this moment, his mind was beset with many distracting thoughts. After continuing to perceive for a short while, a touch of puzzlement surged within Milton Cheney's heart. The situation was strange, inevitably giving rise to some doubt and confusion in Milton Cheney's heart. It shouldn't be. If not all demons leave the Mother River after reaching adulthood, then doesn't that suggest the inherited memories in my mind are incorrect? Could inherited memories be mistaken? Milton Cheney mused to himself. A moment later, Milton Cheney let out a slight sigh. He had fallen into a cognitive trap. Inherited memories rarely contain errors, but they are not entirely infallible. After all, the inherited memories this time were not set by the world consciousness of this world, but by that 12th stage demon monarch. If it were inherited memories set by the world consciousness, then the memories would most likely be free of any problems. But unfortunately, that was not the case. As time slowly passed, Milton Cheney once again reviewed all the inherited memories in his mind. The memories were still those memories, unchanged in the slightest. At this time, he still could not leave the Mother River. Of course, this did not mean that Milton Cheney's transformation was without significance. After all, his realm had truly advanced. If his realm was that of a second-stage demon before, then at this moment, it was that of a third-stage demon. However, even though he had broken through to a third-stage demon, he still had not awakened any abilities. This was actually a disadvantage of being unable to leave the Mother River. Because in the Mother River, talent abilities do not awaken. After pondering for a moment, Milton Cheney eventually dismissed the distractions in his mind. Since he could not leave the Mother River at this time, then he would continue to wait. There was still plenty of time left in his reincarnation simulation. So although there was a hint of puzzlement in Milton Cheney's heart, he was not anxious. Although this transformation did not grant him the ability to leave the Mother River, it still held extraordinary significance for Milton Cheney. It could even be said to be the most meaningful event he had experienced since his reincarnation into this world. Because it proved that his realm could advance, and the pace of advancement was not slow. It should be known that over these years, Milton Cheney had not engaged in any sort of cultivation. The reason he could achieve a breakthrough in his realm was actually the result of accumulation over the passage of time, and during this time of void meditation and waiting, he was almost unaffected by anything. The effect on him was so minimal that Milton Cheney could scarcely perceive it. Not only was there no impact on his body, but there was also no discomfort in his mentality. Just this alone was already a great gain. Because this indicated that if everything was the same as this time, Milton Cheney could rely on this method to become a 4th stage demon, 5th stage demon, or even 6th stage demon. Even if he still could not leave the Mother River over the long years, as long as his realm could advance, the gains from this reincarnation simulation would be substantial. After all, this reincarnation simulation was just a trial and error attempt for Milton Cheney. Under such premises, the greater the gain, the better. Of course, even if the gains were less, it would not be a loss. There is no doubt his trial and error this time was quite successful. At least even if he ended this reincarnation simulation right now, the simulation would still be of significant use to him. Although the changes brought about by this realm breakthrough were not particularly large. But breakthrough is not just a one-time event. If the gains are not great this time, just quietly wait for the second one, right? If the second transformation does not bring much improvement, then isn't there a third transformation? After all, when becoming a fourth stage demon and a fifth stage demon, Milton Cheney would also continue to experience a new round of transformation. Milton Cheney did not believe he could not have a significant improvement from breaking through two great realms. Any cultivation path, no matter what it is, the gap between great realms is inevitably very large. Thinking this, Milton Cheney ceased to ponder further, continuing to void his consciousness, silently awaiting the next realm transformation. The abyssal realm does not reckon time, but time still relentlessly marches on. Having completely voided his consciousness, Milton Cheney was almost unable to perceive the passing of time at all. It was not just that, at this moment, Milton Cheney had ceased to perceive his surroundings. His goal now was simple: to break through to the fourth stage of the demon realm as time passed, then complete the second transformation of his demon body after his reincarnation into this world. Because perhaps by then, he would have found a way to leave the Mother River. He couldn't leave the Mother River now, possibly because he had not yet reached its limit. Or it might be that he hadn't reached the limit of his demon body's transformation. Whether this situation was unique to him or if there had been other precedents, Milton Cheney was not sure. At a certain moment, an idea formed in Milton Cheney's mind. His consciousness also began to recover gradually. After regaining consciousness, Milton Cheney subconsciously perceiving his surroundings. As he had anticipated, there was hardly any change in his environment. At that time, Milton Cheney did not know how much time had passed. But he was clear that a very long time had passed since he had completely emptied his mind. After all, his demon body had now reached the limit of the third stage in the demon realm, and he was very close to the fourth stage. This was also the reason why Milton Cheney chose to regain consciousness. Otherwise, without anything unexpected happening, he wouldn't have recovered from the state of vacuity. After perceiving his environment, Milton Cheney actively sensed the changes in his body. The changes he could perceive were now quite obvious. After all, his perceptual ability had become very powerful after the breakthrough and transformation of his demon body. At least compared to when he had just been reincarnated into this world, his perceptual ability had improved by more than a little. Of course, even if his perceptual ability were weaker, he could still notice the obvious changes. Time continued to pass slowly, and Milton Cheney waited silently. Finally, at a certain moment, an idea formed in Milton Cheney's mind. The barrier to the fourth stage demon had appeared. Breaking through this barrier, he would truly be at the fourth stage of the demon realm. This also meant that he could complete the second transformation of his demon body. If he could successfully complete this transformation, perhaps he would find an opportunity to leave the Mother River. But whether he could leave the Mother River, Milton Cheney did not know. He didn't hold out much hope. After all, his last prediction had been wrong. This transformation was the same as the first one. Once the transformation began, everything was happening subtly and imperceptibly. In fact, the transformation had already begun even before Milton Cheney felt anything. The process of breaking through the barrier of the realm was also the process of the transformation of the demon body. The two occurred simultaneously. Time passed, and the second transformation was successfully completed. Is there inherited memory? At that moment, a thought crossed Milton Cheney's mind. Because the moment he broke through to the fourth stage demon, a series of unfamiliar memories began to emerge in his mind. These memories merged into the river of Milton Cheney's memories as soon as they appeared. This influx of memory was not as vast as the previous one that had appeared in his mind. Milton Cheney was no stranger to inheriting memories, so he digested these new memories quite quickly. After a short time, he had completely assimilated the inherited memories. In the Mother River, Milton Cheney's consciousness recovered slowly. Everything in the memories was very clear, and he didn't feel any discomfort. It really is because I haven't reached the limit that the Mother River can bear. Milton Cheney muttered to himself. The new memories enlightened him as to why he hadn't been able to leave the Mother River before. Now that he had broken through to the fourth stage demon, he could leave the Mother River and truly enter the depths of the abyssal realm. Chapter 775. The memories inherited upon breakthrough to the fourth level of demon had been thoroughly digested by Milton Cheney. After all, it was not the first time Milton Cheney had gone through memory inheritance, so he was able to digest these memories very quickly. Within the Demon Mother River, Milton Cheney's consciousness slowly recovered. The retained memories were crystal clear, and Milton Cheney didn't feel the slightest discomfort during the process of digesting the memories. After completely digesting the inherited memories of this time, Milton Cheney began to perceive if there were any changes to his surrounding environment. After the breakthrough to 4th level demon, his demonic body had undergone its second transformation. This transformation, following his realm breakthrough, had once again evolved his perceptual ability. But when Milton Cheney tried to perceive his environment, he discovered that everything he could perceive around him hadn't changed much. There naturally were changes, it couldn't be completely unchanged. However, such changes were not clear. If in Milton Cheney's previous perception the environment around him appeared in high definition, then now he could perceive everything around him in ultra-high definition. But these perceptible changes in detail were no longer able to elicit any other emotions from Milton Cheney. After all, these changes didn't have any particular impact on him for the time being. Whether it was high definition or ultra-high definition, it didn't make much difference to Milton Cheney. It's also time to leave the Mother River and head to the true abyssal layers. Perceiving his surroundings, Milton Cheney muttered to himself. Milton Cheney had predicted a lot beforehand, so it wasn't surprising to him that this situation arose after his breakthrough. If everything went as expected, he would soon leave the midst of the Demon Mother River. Everything within the Mother River didn't have much to do with him anymore. After all, everything in this world had never had much to do with Milton Cheney from the beginning to the end. Milton Cheney was only able to come to this world through the opportunity of reincarnation simulation. Whether for Milton Cheney himself or for the abyssal realm he had reincarnated into, Milton Cheney was but a passerby. The reason why Milton Cheney had chosen the reincarnation abyss realm was actually due to the lack of many choices. Within the 6th universe, there were only 3 worlds available for reincarnation. Beyond that, there was no other special reason for his reincarnation into this world. Becoming a 4th level demon meant that Milton Cheney was about to leave the dominion of the Mother River, the place of his birth. The region he was going to next was the true territory of the abyssal realm, within the abyssal layers. That place, for Milton Cheney who had inherited memories 3 times by now, was actually not an unfamiliar place. After all, among the numerous memory inheritances, there were many about the abyssal layers. Although Milton Cheney had not actually gone to the abyssal layers yet, he already knew something about what the abyssal layers were like. However, until he truly arrived in the abyssal layers, all his understanding about them was still one-sided. All of it, everything, had to be personally experienced by him to become genuinely real. With this thought, Milton Cheney stopped perceiving his environment and began to sense the changes in his own body. His demonic body's second transformation, though similar to the first in being subtle and imperceptible, was still a change from a 3rd-stage demon to a 4th-level demon, and so there had to be changes. The transformation was complete. But this transformation was not just about enhancing Milton Cheney's perceptual ability. Just before Milton Cheney had sensed the changes in his demonic body, he already felt something. This feeling was that his body must have undergone some significant change. Now, when Milton Cheney began to perceive his demonic body after the transformation, that change clearly surged from the depths of his heart. As I expected, along with my departure from the Mother River, talent power also emerged. Perceiving the change in his demonic body, an idea surfaced in Milton Cheney's mind. Previously, Milton Cheney had wondered if talent power would appear when he became a 4th-level demon or a higher-level demon. Just as he had anticipated, it truly did. And it didn't require him to become a higher-level demon. This time, as he became a 4th-level demon and completed his second transformation, he acquired such ability. Perhaps it wasn't because of his realm, but because he was about to leave the Mother River, that his talent power was born. Demonic Spirit Force. Milton Cheney mused to himself. This power he perceived, known as Demonic Spirit Force, was his talent ability that emerged after his breakthrough to a 4th-level demon. In fact, in the inherited memories, there were memories about the talent abilities. As time slowly passed, the next moment, Milton Cheney began to try to mobilize this talent power known as Demonic Spirit Force. After he activated his talent power, no abnormal situation occurred. His body remained unchanged, and his surroundings were not affected in the slightest. Clearly, his demonic spirit force had not truly been unleashed. Do I need to leave the Mother River before I can release my talent ability? Milton Cheney wondered to himself, speculating. What was certain was that the talent ability demonic spirit force truly existed. Chapter 776. After all, this was the talent ability he clearly felt he possessed after his demon's body had completed its transformation. However, Milton Cheney was unable to mobilize this talent ability. It wasn't that he couldn't mobilize it, but that after mobilizing the ability, there was no effect whatsoever. But Milton Cheney almost instantly understood what the reason was. Without an unexpected turn of events, the likelihood was that it was because of the environment he was currently in. After all, he hadn't truly left the Mother River, and his demon's body was still within the Mother River. It wasn't just himself. The Mother River probably restricted the talent abilities of all the demons existing within it. Within the Mother River, different demons were incapable of affecting each other. And the talent power of a demon was the potential catalyst for influence between different demons. Under such a premise, the possibility that talent power couldn't be mobilized within the demon Mother River was quite high. Of course, although there was a high likelihood of this being the case, Milton Cheney was not 100% certain. After all, in the inherited memory, there was no memory regarding this. However, to verify whether this possibility was true was actually very simple. After all, he had now become a fourth-stage demon and was about to leave the Mother River. At this very moment, Milton Cheney could clearly perceive the growing repulsion between himself and the Mother River, and this repulsion was becoming increasingly significant as time went by. Under such circumstances, if Milton Cheney didn't choose to leave the Mother River after a long time, he would soon be forcibly exiled from it. It's just a pity that the speed at the limit is still too slow. If I could leave the Mother River as a third-stage demon, perhaps I could have gained more, he reflected. Milton Cheney mused to himself. Time slowly passed, and the sense of repulsion between Milton Cheney and the Mother River grew steadily stronger. Therefore, Milton Cheney no longer dwelled on it. Following the method from his memory, Milton Cheney began trying to mobilize his demonic limbs to leave the Mother River. In the inherited memory, there was a specific memory about how to leave the Mother River. The next moment, Milton Cheney clearly perceived that his demon's body gradually began to change. The instant this change took place, there was a slight stir in Milton Cheney's heart. He did not have any other particular emotions arise. After all, this wasn't his first time experiencing such a thing. Even if it were the first time, with clear inherited memories, he wouldn't have felt any discomfort. At this very moment, Milton Cheney could distinctly feel his consciousness weakening until he could no longer sense its existence. Consciousness fell into darkness. This feeling was somewhat similar to when Milton Cheney deliberately emptied his mind. Of course, there were still some differences. After all, it was not that Milton Cheney had voluntarily emptied his consciousness, but that his consciousness lost perception for an instant due to the Mother River's rejection. Time slowly passed, and it was unknown how long it took. When Milton Cheney's consciousness completely returned to clarity, he was no longer in the Mother River. Regaining his thoughts, Milton Cheney subconsciously perceived the environment around him. The surrounding environment was extremely unfamiliar, and in his perception, everything around him was novel. Is this really the abyssal layer of the abyssal realm? Milton Cheney thought to himself. He began to carefully perceive everything around him. If nothing unexpected had happened, then the place where he was likely to be was within the abyssal layer of the abyssal realm. Milton Cheney felt no discomfort at this time. On the contrary, he felt quite comfortable. It was as if he was meant to live here. To give an analogy, it was like Milton Cheney felt as if he had moved from an area with thin oxygen to an area abundant in oxygen. The next moment, Milton Cheney began sensing his demon's body. This sensing brought Milton Cheney to a new discovery. That was, he could now clearly and intuitively sense his body from the outside. That is to say, after leaving the Mother River and arriving here, he had a true body. Previously, Milton Cheney's self-awareness was almost entirely internal. But now things were different. At this moment, Milton Cheney could clearly feel his own body. This situation was not unfamiliar to him, for it was not the first time he became a demon during a simulation. During that past simulation in the Crimson World of the Reincarnation Abyss Realm, he had had the same experience. Now, after arriving in the abyssal layer of the abyssal realm, he possessed a body just like that of a human. His face and the one in reality were exactly the same. After all, it was his consciousness that reincarnated into this world, and consciousness is similar to a human soul. This also meant that after his reincarnation into this world, the demon body he possessed housed the soul of his real self. That's why his appearance was almost indistinguishable from when he was in the wizard realm. However, what his face looked like didn't matter to Milton Cheney at all. After appearing in the abyssal layer, Milton Cheney began to actively sense if there were any other demons around. Within moments of perceiving, Milton Cheney did not detect the presence of other demons on Demon Island. Of course, this did not mean there were no other demons here. This could only indicate that there were no other demons in this region where he appeared. It seems that the growth rate of my demon body within the abyssal layer has sped up quite a bit. At that moment, Milton Cheney murmured to himself. After pondering for a moment, Milton Cheney did not continue to think further. Instead, with the thought, he began to try to mobilize the talent power he had after his second transformation upon breaking through to the fourth stage of demonhood. That was the demonic spirit force talent ability. The next moment, a transparent spiritual body reappeared behind him, towering several times over his demon body. The power contained within it was immensely vast. As soon as the spiritual body appeared, it remained motionless, floating behind Milton Cheney. Milton Cheney could clearly feel the presence of the spiritual body and the powerful energy it contained. This spiritual body was his demon spirit. In fact, the demon spirit was akin to an extension of himself. Indeed, the reason I couldn't perceive my talent ability just now must be due to the demon mother river. Now that I've truly reached the abyssal layer, I can properly mobilize and use my talent power. Milton Cheney murmured to himself again, confirming his earlier conjecture. The next moment, Milton Cheney concealed the demon spirit that had been hovering behind him. After hiding the demon spirit, Milton Cheney's sensory perception of the surrounding environment began to expand. After his breakthrough to the fourth stage as a demon, Milton Cheney's perceptual ability had also become much stronger. This enhancement in perceptual ability might not have been obvious while he was in the Demon Mother River. But now that he had entered the abyssal layer, he could vividly experience how much more powerful his perceptual ability had become. Now, he could sense a significantly larger area than before. Time slowly passed by. After a prolonged period of perception, Milton Cheney ceased his continuous sensing of the surroundings. He could sense everything around him. In fact, the surrounding environment was just as he remembered from his inherited memory. Having experienced the memory inheritance before, Milton Cheney had already gained quite an understanding of the abyssal layer. This understanding perfectly matched his current sensory perception of the environment. Of course, not everything matched, there were some discrepancies between his inherited memories and what he sensed. One such discrepancy was that at the moment, Milton Cheney did not sense the presence of other demons. He had already exerted his full effort to perceive his surroundings, but still, he detected no other demons. It seems this region really doesn't have the presence of other demons. Milton Cheney thought, and the next moment, with the thought, his body disappeared from its place. Through intermittent teleportation, Milton Cheney's demon body had already reached multiple regions within the abyssal layer. Finally, at a certain moment, Milton Cheney's senses changed. Real demons began to appear within his perception. Chapter 777. Seventh Order Demon. Milton Cheney's thoughts stirred, ideas rising in his mind. In his perception, the figure of an immensely large demon clearly manifested. The body of the demon resembled a giant, yet it didn't exert much pressure on Milton Cheney. After all, in reality, he was far beyond this demon in terms of realm. However, Milton Cheney's perception of this demon was completely different from when he was in the Mother River. This time, the demon that appeared in his perception wasn't shrouded in blood like mist. In his perception, the body of the demon was extremely clear, and he could even sense the intricate patterns on the demon's skin. Although Milton Cheney had no other thoughts, he couldn't deny that this demon was much stronger than him, at least in the abyssal realm. After all, this reincarnation in the abyssal realm was just one reincarnation simulation, without accumulating multiple simulations. Therefore, in this world, he was merely a fourth-order demon, with no hidden strength. It was the first time Milton Cheney sensed the presence of other demons within the abyssal layers. But it wasn't the first time he had a clear, direct perception of other demons besides himself, as he had sensed the existence of other demons both in previous simulations and this one. If he could perceive this demon, then this demon could surely sense his presence as well. If the demon attacked him, then Milton Cheney believed this simulation would most likely come to an end. Random thoughts began to rise in Milton Cheney's mind. Fear what may come. Almost instantly after sensing the demon, an overwhelming momentum enveloped him. The next moment, his consciousness plunged into darkness. Within the reincarnation space, Milton Cheney's consciousness gradually returned to normal. An accident still occurred, that demon actually took action against me directly, he mused. Milton Cheney's mood was not good. After all, this reincarnation simulation had just barely begun. But what was done, with no other options available. Before Milton Cheney could closely examine the reincarnation space, his consciousness was ejected from it. Within the path of transcendence, Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes. Everything around him was exceedingly familiar. His time experienced within this reincarnation simulation wasn't long. Therefore, Milton Cheney didn't feel the slightest discomfort after the simulation ended. At the same time, a familiar mechanical voice echoed in his mind the moment his consciousness left the reincarnation space. Reincarnation simulation ended. Successfully retained reincarnation simulation memory. Detected that the host will not be affected by reincarnation memory. Simulator memory protection function is not activated. Activate it manually. Detected that the host is a fourth-order demon. Would you like to retain and modify to adapt to the rules of the wizard realm? Do not activate memory protection. In reality, upon hearing the mechanical voice in his brain, Milton Cheney's thoughts moved. The next moment, all memories from the reincarnation simulation were fully retained in reality. Milton Cheney did not manually activate memory protection. After all, the simulator had detected that he was not influenced by the memories of this reincarnation simulation. Under such circumstances, there was naturally no need to activate memory protection. It seemed he hadn't used this function of the simulator in a long time, as his mind was far too resilient by now for memories to have any significant impact. Moreover, if he activated memory protection, all memories from his time in the abyssal realm would become incredibly vague. For him, this would be disadvantageous without any benefit. In such a case, unless he deliberately sought out specific memories, these memories would almost completely sink to the bottom of his heart. This was not a good situation for Milton Cheney. This was also why he almost never chose to activate memory protection. After familiarizing himself with all the memories of this simulation, Milton Cheney reopened his eyes. Without hesitation, his thoughts moved again. Retain the realm from the simulation. Retaining the fourth-order demon's realm in reality was a given, otherwise, what would be the point of this simulation for Milton Cheney? So, without any hesitation, he chose to retain realm. After he chose to retain the fourth-order demon and modify it to suit the rules of the wizard realm, Milton Cheney felt no particular sensation. In his spiritual sea, a black and red round bead emerged. This bead essentially represented all the powers of a fourth-order demon that amounted to Milton Cheney. Yet, for him, this was almost of no help, as his realm had already reached the limit of a ninth-order wizard immortal, much too strong for a fourth-order demon. This reincarnation simulation had ended too swiftly for Milton Cheney, unexpectedly so. But not every simulation operates as he anticipates. Thus, no other emotions surfaced in Milton Cheney's mind at this moment. The next instant, his thoughts stirred, and the light screen representing the simulator now appeared before his eyes. Milton Cheney's gaze rested on the simulation count section of the light screen. Text simulation times, 2. Would you like to initiate text simulation? Milton Cheney had yet to use the newly accumulated 2 text simulation times and had no plans to use them just yet. Chapter 778. After all, he wanted to try amassing 5 text simulation times before initiating the text simulation. So, upon seeing the prompt's black letters emerge, Milton Cheney decisively rejected it with a thought. No. The next moment, Milton Cheney concealed the simulator's light screen once again. Time flew by in the blink of an eye, and the span of 500 years almost passed in a single moment. Within the realm of Transcendence Path, Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes, awakening from a state of empty consciousness. During these 500 years in the true world, Milton Cheney had not entered a state of cultivation or deduced the wizard immortal cultivation path in reality. After all, several hundred years were truly too fleeting, and any potential impact was minuscule. Hence, Milton Cheney merely entered a state of empty consciousness and silently awaited the passage of time, accumulating new simulation counts. By now, he had completely organized all the memories in his mind. At the moment, whether he initiated a text simulation or a true body simulation, he could deduce new realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path within them. The next moment, a thought from Milton Cheney brought forth the simulator's light screen once again. Milton Cheney's gaze rested on the simulation count section of the light screen. Text simulation times, 7. Reincarnation simulation count, 1. True body simulation count, 1. Would you like to initiate text simulation? Not now. Seeing the prompt to initiate a text simulation in black letters on the light screen, Milton Cheney instantly rejected it in his mind without hesitation. Although he had already amassed 7 text simulation times, his priority at that moment was not to verify the text simulation. Therefore, Milton Cheney rejected it with hardly any consideration. Do you wish to initiate reincarnation simulation? No. Once again, Milton Cheney refused. The next moment, a new prompt in black letters emerged. Would you like to initiate true body simulation? Begin. This time, Milton Cheney did not refuse. The next moment, aside from the light blue light curtain representing the simulator vanishing before his eyes, the world did not undergo the slightest change. However, Milton Cheney, who had experienced countless true body simulations, was naturally very clear that the true body simulation had indeed begun at that moment. Inside the transcendence path, Milton Cheney's expression remained serene. The true body simulation had started, yet Milton Cheney was in no rush. At this moment, he was at the limit of the 8th stage wizard immortal, with an ample lifespan. This indicated that he had plenty of time to exist within this true body simulation. In the true body simulation, Milton Cheney had only one task to do, to deduce the wizard immortal cultivation path to the best of his ability. The wizard immortal cultivation path was still his foundation. At this point, the wizard immortal cultivation path he mastered had reached its limit, so he must continue to deduce further. Moreover, he aspired to finish the transcendence path and become a beyond the horizon. Therefore, his mastery of the wizard immortal cultivation path had to be continually deduced to its limit. As for whether the wizard immortal cultivation path could ultimately transform into a new sequence, Milton Cheney was not sure. But he was well aware that the wizard immortal cultivation path was his foundation. Time swiftly passed. There was virtually no difference between true body simulation and reality. Except that, within the true body simulation, the simulator could not be used. Unwittingly, scores of years had slipped away within the true body simulation. In a certain moment, when Milton Cheney's body within the true body simulation dissolved into particles of light and scattered, it signified the end of this true body simulation. In the actual world, it was still the familiar interior of the transcendence path. Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes. A tremendous change occurred in the scene before Milton Cheney's eyes. The familiar sights from within the true body simulation vanished from his view. Once his perception was restored, Milton Cheney's body reappeared at the starting point of the transcendence path. Various jumbled thoughts in his mind were suppressed by Milton Cheney. The light blue transparent light curtain that represented the simulator was still hovering in front of Milton Cheney's eyes. True body simulation end. Retain realm, technique, and memory. 2 black lines of text flashed across the light screen. A familiar mechanical voice once again echoed in Milton Cheney's mind. The true body simulation, which lasted for hundreds of millions of years, completely spent on the transcendence path, was now over. This true body simulation was, without a doubt, the longest he had experienced since he acquired the simulator. After all, it was the first true body simulation he had used since the update of the simulator. During this simulation, Milton Cheney had survived until the limit of his lifespan. A full 600 million years. After breaking through to the limit of the 8th stage wizard immortal, this was the first time Milton Cheney clearly knew his true lifespan limit. It must be said that compared to other 8th stage cultivators, Milton Cheney's lifespan wasn't particularly high, but it was definitely substantial. However, it was a pity that, despite experiencing hundreds of millions of years, he still couldn't break through that bottleneck in his cultivation realm. At this moment, Milton Cheney remained at the limit of an 8th stage wizard immortal. The limit of the wizard immortal cultivation path was still at this realm. Although he had memories of many other cultivation paths, truly deriving the 9th stage wizard immortal cultivation path was not easy. At least for Milton Cheney, one true body simulation was definitely not enough. In his deductions, if text simulations were included, it would take at least 100,000 years in reality to push the realm of wizard immortal cultivation up by one level. Of course, that was the time it would take relying solely on his own strengths. If he could find help from others in the simulation, that time would be greatly reduced. With this thought, Milton Cheney didn't ponder any further. The true body simulation had ended, and he had already learned the answers he sought. At this point, musing over a mess of things was of little significance. The next moment, with a thought from Milton Cheney, his gaze shifted to the simulator's light screen still floating in front of him. Milton Cheney's gaze rested on the simulation count section of the light screen. Text simulation times, 7. Reincarnation simulation count, 1. Do you wish to start a text simulation? Yes, accumulate 5 text simulation times to start text simulation. Without any hesitation, Milton Cheney chose to activate the text simulation. But it wasn't the activation of a single text simulation, rather, he had accumulated 5 text simulation times before starting the text simulation. After all, since the simulator's update, the most substantial change to text simulations was precisely this. The ability to stack 5 text simulations so that the simulation could inherit all of his real-life memories was a feature Milton Cheney had not yet truly experienced. Text simulation has started. As the host has chosen to stack 5 text simulation times, you will inherit all memories from reality in this text simulation. Please choose your character traits for this text simulation. Calm or decisive or modest. Looking at the character options on the screen, Milton Cheney almost instantly selected the traits calm and modest. The next moment, lines of black text began to emerge on the light screen. Milton Cheney's tranquil gaze remained fixed on the screen, unmoving. The segments of black text represented everything that Milton Cheney experienced in this text simulation. As time went by, this text simulation, formed by stacking 5 text simulation times, neared its end. When the stream of black text on the light screen ceased to continue, it signified the real conclusion of the text simulation. Text simulation ends, memory and realm within text simulation retained. The simulation ended, and the black text representing the content of this text simulation gradually faded from the screen until it vanished entirely. The familiar mechanical voice also echoed within Milton Cheney's mind. A vast expanse of memory also surfaced in Milton Cheney's mind at this moment. Since Milton Cheney was prepared, there was no change in his expression when this segment of memory appeared. He simply closed his eyes slowly, beginning to assimilate this memory. A few moments later, Milton Cheney opened his eyes again. Chapter 779. The memories that had suddenly appeared in Milton Cheney's mind had all been entirely digested by him. The completion of the memory digestion meant that all the memories from this text simulation had now merged into the river of Milton Cheney's memories. After all, Milton Cheney was at the limit of the 8th stage wizard immortal realm. Thus, his consciousness was naturally incredibly powerful. That was the reason he was able to digest these memories so quickly. The digestion of memories had little to do with the strength of one's mental state but had a significant connection with the strength of one's consciousness. Indeed, after stacking 5 text simulation times, the simulated me also began to extrapolate the realm of the wizard immortal cultivation path. Milton Cheney muttered to himself. He had anticipated this occurrence. After all, this time he had overlaid 5 text simulation times. Under such a choice, he naturally triggered the new feature added to the simulator after the update. Plus, at this point, Milton Cheney had cultivated to the very limit of the 8th stage wizard immortal. Reaching the limit of the 8th stage wizard immortal meant he could no longer progress further. In that case, to continue to advance, the simulated him had to keep extrapolating the realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path. He possessed enough memories, so the simulated him naturally extrapolated the realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path as he had predicted. It was just unfortunate that there was still too little time, and his gains were not as large as he had hoped. To truly extrapolate the realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path to the 9th stage, it would require a tremendous amount of text simulation times, at least tens of thousands of years, or even 100,000 years in reality together. If converted into the number of text simulation times, it would require at least several hundred more simulations. Of course, whether or not it would take that long was only a prediction at this point. Milton Cheney wouldn't confirm all conclusions with just a single simulation. He was well aware that, with the passage of time, he would inevitably truly extrapolate the wizard immortal cultivation path to a new stage. After pondering for a moment, Milton Cheney no longer dwelled on it. With a thought, the light blue light curtain that hung before him vanished from his sight in the next moment. Milton Cheney closed his eyes once more, and all the thoughts in his heart were gathered at this moment. There were still 2 more opportunities for text simulation, and 1 more for reincarnation simulation, but Milton Cheney did not intend to use these simulation opportunities any further. After all, whether it was text simulation or reincarnation simulation, a single opportunity could provide him with only a small amount of assistance. To maximize the benefits, it was still better to accumulate more simulation counts and open them concurrently. It was true for text simulation, and the same for reincarnation simulation. Time swiftly flew by, and, in the blink of an eye, another 2,000 years passed. Within the path of transcendence in reality, Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes. During these 2,000 years, Milton Cheney had also tried to begin extrapolating the realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path in reality. But the gains were minimal. 2,000 years were still too short a time, and for the extrapolation of the realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path, such brief time offered almost no assistance. After opening his eyes, Milton Cheney stopped further extrapolation of the realms in reality. The next moment, with a slight shift in his thoughts, the light blue light curtain representing the simulator was summoned by him again. 2,000 years in reality were enough for him to accumulate many simulation counts of different types. Except for fate simulation, which did not accumulate any new counts, the other three types of simulation had accumulated quite a few. It was time to reap the rewards. If nothing unexpected occurred, after using these accumulated simulation counts, he would certainly make considerable progress. Of course, how significant the gains would be was still an unknown at this time. The next moment, Milton Cheney's gaze settled on the column representing simulation counts. Text simulation times, 22. Reincarnation simulation count, 5. True body simulation count, 2. Do you want to initiate text simulation? No. Seeing the black text prompting him to start text simulation on the light screen, Milton Cheney thought and directly declined. Milton Cheney wanted to choose to stack 5 simulation counts before initiating text simulation. Under this circumstance, it was naturally better to wait until he had more memories in reality before starting it. So Milton Cheney planned to save these few text simulation times to initiate at the end. At least after the true body simulation and reincarnation simulation. After all, if so, he would have more memories in reality, and the simulated him could gain more from extrapolating the realms. The next moment, after Milton Cheney decided against initiating text simulation, a new prompt appeared on the light screen. Do you want to initiate reincarnation simulation? Not now. Faced with the prompt to initiate reincarnation simulation, Milton Cheney similarly refused. 5 reincarnation simulation counts could be stacked into one, which meant his apparent 5 counts of reincarnation simulation were actually just one. This one reincarnation simulation was extremely precious to Milton Cheney. Under such circumstances, he had to consider it carefully. At this time, Milton Cheney had not yet decided which world to reincarnate into, which was why he chose not to initiate reincarnation simulation for now. Do you want to initiate true body simulation? Initiate. This time, Milton Cheney did not hesitate or refuse. Chapter 780. After all, compared to text simulation or reincarnation simulation, Milton Cheney was much less concerned when it came to true body simulation. True body simulation is called a simulation, but in reality, the experience is almost the same as real life. Therefore, Milton Cheney naturally had no reason to hesitate. Moreover, he had set the tone for true body simulation long ago. Within it, he had only one goal: to continue deducing the wizard immortal cultivation path of the 8th stage and advance this path of cultivation to the 9th stage realm. Beyond that, if there was anything else that was relatively important, it was to live a bit longer within the true body simulation. Do you wish to start this true body simulation from the last checkpoint? No. Milton Cheney rejected the prompt from the simulator. The reason was simple: at the end of the last true body simulation, due to some experiments he tried, his situation was not safe when the simulation concluded. If he rashly continued from the last checkpoint, Milton Cheney would be at great risk. Since Milton Cheney started the true body simulation with the goal of deducing the realms of wizard immortal cultivation, he naturally didn't need to take these risks. The next moment, true body simulation began, and the world did not change in the slightest. Except that the light screen representing the simulator suddenly vanished before him. Of course, after countless true body simulations, Milton Cheney was well aware that such a situation was bound to happen, so his expression remained calm. Within the path of transcendence, after the true body simulation commenced, Milton Cheney's expression remained unchanged. Milton Cheney wasn't in a hurry to leave the starting point of the path of transcendence. Instead, he began deducing the realms of the wizard immortal cultivation path right away. At this moment, he was at the limit of the 8th stage wizard immortal, with an abundance of longevity. An abundance of longevity meant that he could stay for a very long time within this true body simulation. Of course, this was relative. Although he had an abundance of longevity and could stay in the true body simulation for a very long time, the time consumed to deduce realms was much more. One true body simulation was definitely not enough. However, when many true body simulations were conflated, there would eventually come a moment when he would deduce a higher stage realm. Time flew by, several 100 million years seemed very lengthy, but for the path of transcendence, it was extremely brief. After all, within the path of transcendence, there were too many beings whose lifespans far exceeded the concept of 100 million years. Many mighty beings even measured their lifespan in epochs. Milton Cheney might not have encountered such powerful beings either in reality or in true body simulation. But that doesn't mean such beings didn't exist. After all, in fate simulation, he had indeed inherited the body of such a high-level being. As time passed, before Milton Cheney knew it, several 100 million years had elapsed in this true body simulation. At a certain moment, Milton Cheney suddenly awoke from his state of deducing realms. He was well aware that his longevity had reached its limit. This also meant that this true body simulation was about to end. Time slowly passed, and tens of thousands more years went by. At a certain moment, back in reality, within the starting point area of the path of transcendence, Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes. The scene before him had changed, at least it was different from that within the true body simulation. Consciousness gradually awakened from the darkness, and the chaotic thoughts in his mind were also hidden away by Milton Cheney. The light screen of the simulator still hovered before his eyes, making it clear to Milton Cheney that he had finished this round of true body simulation. True body simulation end. Realm, technique, and memory have been retained. Above the light screen, familiar lines of black text flashed by. A tone reminiscent of a mechanical alert echoed in his mind. He had journeyed through 600 million years of time. In a lengthy era, there comes a moment when even the longest journey reaches its end. Even the true body simulation, as real as life itself, was no exception. This true body simulation was even lengthier than the last one Milton Cheney had experienced. But Milton Cheney felt no discomfort. Because he was more experienced now. In this true body simulation, his gains in deducing the realms were considerably greater than the last time. After all, this was not the first time he had used the true body simulation since updating the simulator. His own limit of longevity, he was very clear about. Hence, he had made preparations early in the true body simulation. This time, when the true body simulation ended, his surroundings were absolutely safe. This also meant that after the next true body simulation began, he could completely choose to enter the node at which the last true body simulation ended. As he thought of this, Milton Cheney's gaze returned to the light blue light curtain hovering in front of him. The true body simulation might have ended, but he still had one chance for another true body simulation. Text simulation times, 22. Reincarnation simulation count, 5. True body simulation count, 1. Would you like to initiate true body simulation? Yes. Without any hesitation, Milton Cheney directly chose to initiate the true body simulation. The accumulated count of true body simulations was meant to be used after all. Would you like to start this true body simulation from the last node of the previous one? Yes. This time, Milton Cheney did not refuse. After all, the node at the end of the last true body simulation was a safe one. At this point, Milton Cheney didn't need to consider so much anymore. His making this choice was actually for the sake of strategic planning for his realm extrapolation. After all, if he were always to extrapolate the realm by himself, the time consumed would be too lengthy, so he planned to find some helpers within the true body simulation. Of course, this was not easy, but Milton Cheney would be very cautious in the true body simulation. Trial and error could not be risk-free, but if a lot of time could be saved, Milton Cheney was still willing to take some risks. The next moment the true body simulation commenced, the light screen that represented the simulator suddenly disappeared again in front of him. Milton Cheney's expression did not change at all, still calm and serene. The surrounding environment was very familiar, but it was not the starting point of the transcendence path. As expected, I've returned to this node again. If the simulation count doesn't double, doesn't this mean that if I'm stable enough, theoretically I could achieve infinite lifespan in the true body simulation? I might even see the future after an epoch. Milton Cheney mused to himself. Although he already had an ample lifespan, if he could accumulate lifespan over and over again, it would be of considerable help to him. Time slowly slipped by. In the blink of an eye, billions of years passed once again. Years were long, but they also seemed very short. At least for Milton Cheney, his lifetime within the true body simulation was not too extended. Perhaps this was because he experienced too many simulations. He had spent too much time within different simulations. After all, now even the memories retained from any casual text simulation lasted for hundreds of millions of years. As time passed, this true body simulation gradually drew to a close. Until Milton Cheney truly woke from the state where his consciousness had been emptied, he really understood that it was time for this true body simulation to end. "It's over," Milton Cheney whispered to himself. The next moment, his consciousness completely plunged into darkness. After his consciousness fell into darkness, the world shattered like a glass mirror, as if this world, which seemed as real as any other, was tailored solely for Milton Cheney. Of course, Milton Cheney was not aware of this. Back in reality, within the transcendence path, Milton Cheney slowly opened his eyes. The scene before his eyes was entirely different from that of the true body simulation, but Milton Cheney felt no strangeness. After all, after every simulation ended, and his consciousness recovered, the scene before his eyes was always this way. At this time, his consciousness had awakened from the darkness. Thoughts began circulating, and ideas surfaced from the depths of his mind, yet the next moment Milton Cheney pushed those thoughts aside. The simulator light screen still floated in front of him. But at this time, Milton Cheney's attention was not on the light screen. True body simulation end. Realm, technique, memory retained. A mechanical voice echoed in his mind, and a thoughtful expression appeared on Milton Cheney's face.